Hello, welcome to our live coverage of the 2023 budget. My name is Vivian Kai. Local, if you're watching me via TV, this is City TV. If you're listening to us via radio, it is City 97.3 FM. Now, the 2023 budget statement is considered as one of the most critical budget this country has ever experienced. This is because of current happenings in the country. Rising food inflation, rise and fall, continuous depreciation of the city, unemployment, deepening economic challenges, among others, means the finance minister needs to do more to bring some relief to Ghanaians across the country. Will today's budget bring that needed relief to Ghanaians across the country, especially for the next year? We're told in that budget a lot of things will be looked at, including debt restructuring, including talks with the IMF, including taxes, including revenue and expenditure. Will that yield the necessary results we're expecting to see? Today's show, which will center on the budget, will take you to Parliament in a bit where the Finance Minister will present that budget. We'll be picking some answers from people well known in the areas of the economy, in the areas of trade, in the areas of agriculture, and all the sectors that matter. So stay with us as we bring you the 360 coverage of the budget. And you're welcome back to our coverage of the 2023 budget. My name is Vivian Kai Iloko. And I'll be doing this with four gentlemen in the studio, and at a point, some more will join us via Zoom. So let me introduce to you the gentlemen that will be joining me for today's coverage of the budget. I have with me Dr. Patrick Isuming. He's an economist at the University of Ghana Business School. Doc, welcome to City TV and City FM.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Good, thank you. And then I also have Clement Boateng, the Vice President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. Mr. Boateng, welcome.
Good morning, Vivian, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Later, we'll be joined by Edward Kariwe. He's the General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, GAWU, as well as Bernard Avler, who is the General Manager here at City FM and City TV. Gentlemen, welcome. Now, today, before I let us start about, the economy and the budget, your predictions for the match later today at 4. I know you all be watching that match. No, what's your predictions?
Yeah, I just hope that the Black Stars play well.
Okay.
And we get at least a draw. That would be a good platform to build on. But I think it would be good to see that the team is playing well and not making mistakes. And then hopefully we will come out with a victory.
Okay, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I am just praying for a win, just a win, but I can't predict how the scores will go.
So a win for Ghana. You are praying that we'll win.
That Ghana will win and get a maximum 3 points. That's all.
But Portugal,
Vivian, if you look at the way this World Cup is going, there has been some surprises. Now, no nation is a minnow when it comes to football.
Yeah.
So if you are meeting any nation and you underrate the nation, you underrate it at your own peril.
Yeah.
And that is
what
happened.
See what Saudi Arabia and even Japan did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Japan defeating almighty Germany.
So, well, you see these things, and then when it comes to us, we go and do our own.
Yes.
So we are hoping that Ghana wins. But thank you so much for coming. So good luck to the Black Stars. We wish you well. Go make us proud.
Yeah.
So, Doc, we've seen quite a challenging period for Ghana. We're told by government the Ukraine war global, COVID, all these things have led to what we're seeing. The finance minister is in Parliament today. We're all hopeful that this budget, will bring some smile a bit, and then the Black Stars will climax it with a win. But your thoughts in general around the economy before we come to your expectations of the budget. How bad is the economy from where you sit as an economist?
Yes, I think, we can't understate how bad the 2022 has been for the economy. It's difficult to find a lot of positives to describe where we are. I think, we started the year with downgrades. Yeah. And then, even at the start, before the start of the year, we've seen prices going up. Food prices started going up sometime last year. And then it has just continued. And, government also struggled to pass some of its programs. And, just when you think that it couldn't get any worse, then get worse. So I think the currency has depreciated sharply. Yeah. The prices are out of control. And the government has struggled to rein in to redirect the economy to the path that's desired. So I think, this is a huge crisis, but it also gives us an opportunity to make important changes so that going forward we don't see this kind of difficulty.
Okay. Well, look at the changes and your expectations of the budget. But Clement, you are in the economy proper. You are feeling because you are part of the people who are supposed to oil the economy and make things better. From your side, what's been your general impression about happenings recently?
Yeah, Vivian, good morning and thank you once more for having me. As you rightly said, we are, having the real taste or the real feel of the economy. And in every country, we will say it is the businessmen, that dictate the affairs, the economy of the country. And so if the economy, doesn't go well, then it goes on to affect the business community, and then everything crumbles. As we are all aware, we began the year, January, at a rate of 6 cedis, 20 pesos to the dollar. Yeah. Yes, and as I'm talking to you now, it's hovering around 14 cedis, 50 pesos to the dollar. So if you do a cumulative analysis, you will see that the cedi has, since the beginning of the year to now, depreciated to close to about 80%. And when it happens like that, then it's have a very negative impact on businesses. Not to talk about how the policy rate, has gone up from the beginning of the year was, I think, about 14%, yes, thereabout. Currently at 27%. Yeah. 27%. And, the moment policy rate goes up, it affects interest rates or lending rates. Currently, the reference rate, the GNR Ghana reference rate is about 27%. That is how much the banks will have to borrow from the central bank before they will add their margins. If they add their margins, it's getting to almost about 40%. So you can see how, negative it has had on businesses. Not to talk about inflation also. People define inflation as more cedis chasing few goods. But is that the case? Is that a reality? We have more goods in the market, but we don't have the cedis to purchase them. So this inflation that they are talking about, is it the creation of somebody? Is it not artificial inflation or what? So in totality, I would say if you look at the whole trend, it's not been good for businesses at all. Not to even talk about high duties that we are even currently paying at the ports. So it's negative, and it doesn't, augur well for businesses.
Okay. Before I let you tell me your expectations of the budget and some of the key areas that we should look out for, you've all mentioned inflation. I want to play a quick clip on food inflation, what we're seeing, in the
markets.
The markets and all that. So this report looks at just that, about food inflation. Then I'll come back to you guys.
200 Ghana cedis as at the start of the year was just about enough to get all the groceries she would need.
February, March, oh, no me any being. I can't get more 2 million podents. I can't get a dano. In your here, more baggy. Ona 4. Need the oil, you mini. No me no point here a dano. I boy 35 Ghana cedis. You come put 25 in here. In your here, chicken, 1 kilo, 12 cedis. Ona, she be a
Those who shop with a higher budget have also not been spared by the harsh economic reality.
500, I used to buy rice. I'll get change. I can buy tomatoes and some small things. By now, they're 500 there. You can't get anything.
While shoppers lament over their concerns, businesses into the retail of food are also reeling under the impact.
It has increased almost 100%. The prices have been increased. We are buying cassava, a bag at 100. That is 100. It's now 180. Yes, a bag of cassava is now 180. Like Southern oil, the bottle, it was 15 cedis. It's now 45. Yes. And then the palm oil, yes, 10 cedis. It's now 45. Yes.
Our local palm oil?
Yes, our local palm oil. I learned they are now using it for the salad oil, but the imported ones are not coming.
How is this high cost of food items affecting businesses like that of this local Choba operator?
Look at this place. Because of the price, we have also increased our food, and people are not buying. As you tell me, there's nobody here. So in fact, we are in terrible business. Yes.
So if I come here in January, how much would I need to eat and how much will I need?
Oh, formerly we are selling the good meat. Was it 5 cedis? We are now selling it 10 cedis. So the fufu now is 4 cedis and above. Formerly we were giving 3 cedis. Now if fufu 4 cedis and above. So you have to eat about fufu, let's say 6 cedis, good meat 10 cedis, making 16 instead of 10 cedis in the future, formally.
With these high prices, one would have thought that the farmers would be at the winning end, but that is not the case. They also have their own fair share of challenges.
We don't make any profit. So far as the food prices are going up, the same thing that the farm inputs are also rising. A bag of fertilizer, 400 Ghana cedis. And then you buy this weedicide, pesticide and other things. It's because that is our work. If not that, I would say that there is no benefit going into farming. Because at the end of the day, you won't get anything. If you're going to sit down and calculate, there is no benefit in farming. Yes.
Increases in food prices, housing, electricity and fuel and 3 other divisions pushed inflation for the month of October to 40.4% in Ghana. Food inflation recorded the highest rate among all the components as against non-food inflation, according to figures from the Ghana Statistical Service. The increase by food inflation indicates a jump of more than 3% from the previous rate of 37.2%. Food inflation was 43.7% in the month of October 2022, compared with 37.8% in October 2022. While Ghana recorded such high figures with its food inflation, South Africa, another country on the continent also facing the impact of COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war, has quite a different story. Its food and non-alcoholic beverages inflation, according to tradingeconomics.com, stands just about 12% for the month of October. What then could they be doing differently?
Well, I lived in South Africa for well over 10 years now, and it's an agricultural country, also one of the most industrialized in terms of manufacturing. So you have both sectors doing well. So food production, it's a very serious thing. It's mostly conglomerate agriculture, as I will call it, mostly mechanized farming. We have a lot of peasant farmers, but in the space of production for export and to feed some of the local markets, it's largely driven by the large-scale commercial farms. Largely due to that, a lot of the food that South Africans eat, it's produced locally.
So what will be the game changer for players in the agricultural value chain ahead of the 2023 budget presentation?
So to me, I think a very short term, these are the strategies that we need to look at. In the medium term, that is next year farming, what I expect to see the government do in order to mitigate the issue of unreliable rainfall pattern, to increase the budget allocation on irrigation facilities. Portable Multipurpose Dam is a project that has already been captured in the Ministry of Finance budget, but there was no budget for its execution, leading to the project being abandoned. So we expect that as we are in the crying moment, we should quickly put money into construction that dam. And then many other irrigation projects that are silted, we get them desilted and renovate them. When we do that, farmers will increase their production in that era. Mechanization. The Ministry of Food and Agriculture are bringing in some mechanization facilities. That is fantastic. How do we make sure that these facilities actually reach the farmer who needs it? There are instances where businessmen will go and hijack these facilities, but the services do not reach the farmer. But if you ensure that these facilities are distributed evenly, this is the part of agriculture who are dealing day in and out with the farmer, they will ensure services are delivered to the farmers.
For a lot of consumers, they will be on the lookout for policies that will ensure that the prices of foodstuffs on the market reduce significantly so that they can return to their earlier budget in January that was able to get them most of the items they needed in their homes. Reporting for City News, my name is Michael Obodu.
So you saying over there, not just traders, but everyday people, you and I, on how much more they need to pump in to the basics they need. Earlier I said we'll be joined by the General Secretary for the General Agricultural Workers Union, Mr. Edward Kariwa. He's joined us. Edward, welcome to our coverage of the budget. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm also happy to be here.
Okay.
This is a very nice place.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move straight to the inflation, food inflation especially. And I'm going to start with you, Edward, because you are in there. You people are the ones giving us expensive food, and we are struggling to pay for it. What's happening in the agri sector? We thought there are many initiatives put in place, planting for food and jobs, incentives and subsidies for fertilizer, so many inputs being put in there, and so much investment into the industry. We shouldn't be seeing the food inflation we are seeing now.
Well, that is true, and we should not have been experiencing what we are seeing now. But it's one thing having a good policy, and then it's another thing ensuring that that good policy is properly implemented. There have been very serious challenges with the implementation of those initiatives that have been put up by government. The Planting for Food and Jobs program has two major objectives: to produce enough food for consumption, industry, and for export. And then the other objective is to create jobs. So in order to produce enough food, then government thought that if you look at the yield per plot of land, is low, and it was investigated to discover that it was because there was low application of fertilizer. And when you apply low fertilizer, it means the yield per plot will be low. So they needed to get more farmers to apply more fertilizer. So because of that, they subsidized the fertilizer. The other point was that, no, if your seed is wrong, then of course, no matter how you take care of your farm, the output will still be low. So they try to get a certified seed. Now, there's a difference between a seed and then a grain. Sometimes what we eat is grain, it's not seed. But when you drop it, it can also germinate. But the germination rate will be very low. So you clean it, you process it to get seed that when you germinate, when you put it in the soil, the germination rate will be very high. So that's why we call the certified seed. So this is what government implemented. Now, when it came to ensuring that fertilizer actually got to those who produce, it never got to them most of the time.
Why is that? What is happening in the middle, in between there?
Yeah, first they started with the coupon system. That, look, come and take coupon, 2 acres to 5 acres. You are qualified for the program. That was in 2017. People who did not even have farms got the coupons.
Going for the coupon.
They go for the coupon.
How are they getting the coupon? If you are going to get the coupon, you should show certain things, or anybody can walk in. Where do they get it? The ministry?
You see, there are certain things, when you say them, in all this, what we are doing, you cannot divorce politics from it. I know because the new government came, there are all these food soldiers everywhere who think that the government has come and they must benefit. And then those who have been given the mandate to run the economy also thought that they have got what? They owe these people and they have to find them work. So these were some of the things. And then people who did not even have farms had coupons. So they will now sell to the farmers.
Wow.
Yes, that's how it all started. And we said, no, that system will not work. Then eventually they said, oh, that was the system. And they were giving figures. In the year 2018, by the end of 2017, they said that we had recorded about 745,000 jobs were created by the Platform for Food and Jobs. But we in Gao questioned that because as just being with Gao is not only because we are in the agriculture sector, we are also labor people, and we understand what a job is. So we said jobs are verifiable, jobs are tangible, you know where they are. When someone is looking for you, they can trace you to this place, and that, if you are not seated here, they will know that you are not seated here.
So the jobs that they claim that you couldn't even trace?
We couldn't trace them. We said, show us where the jobs are. And that was what they could not trace. They ended up saying that those jobs were not even paying social security because they were informal jobs. Yeah. And I'm saying, no, this is not what the Ghanaians are crying for. Yeah. When you meet a Ghanaian on the street and he's talking about jobs, he's talking about a job that he can earn enough to feed for the day and also to meet other expenses. But not a job where when the truckload of fertilizer comes, the boys who come to offload the fertilizer, you count that as jobs. And then after a day or two, that particular truck is not there, and these people do not have jobs, and you call them jobs. All those things were counted and put there.
As jobs.
As jobs.
But even if the fertilizer distribution was done right and farmers were getting it, it would have led to creation of jobs, because that means they would have more yields and they would need more hands. But in this case, they were saying that it didn't even get to the farmers to improve upon their yields.
Yes. So that was one of the challenges. Much of the fertilizer did not get to the farmers, and those who then had the coupons, what did they do? It's a subsidized one. They sell to the farmers and they smuggle the rest out.
Yeah. But I thought there was an initiative to stop the smuggling at the borders, illegal or legal.
You see?
It didn't work?
You see, we can sometimes tickle ourselves.
The borders are porous.
We can sometimes just tickle ourselves. And we can put the problem on like saying that the borders are porous. No, the borders are not as porous as we are made to believe.
Okay.
Because we have people working there, they know who smuggles and who does not smuggle through. But it was not only just about carrying, say, 2 bags of fertilizer, doing this, passing through some rough road and crossing. That was not, this is not the
The whole track
okay.
load.
the whole track load. Where will it pass?
Wow.
Where will it pass? Look, so there was heavy smuggling, and that type of smuggling could not be done without the knowledge of the authorities. You see? And what we saw was that they were just unable to stop it. Why are they unable to stop it? Because probably they are complicit. Because if you go throughout the whole country, we have got security all over. The police are there, other national security are there, immigration is there, customs is there. All these people are security, they know. So how come that people will be smuggling and they cannot? And in any case, it was smuggling in large quantities.
Wow.
And you cannot put that blame on farmers. It is true that some farmers will take the fertilizer which is meant for a particular plot, but because they don't have enough, they say, okay, I've got another farm here. Let me take 2 bags and put on that farm and then put the 3 bags here. Those ones are also there. You may also have a situation where a farmer may decide to just sell one of the bags to meet an agent family need. They are also there. But you know, the major smuggling was not done by the farmers.
Okay, so fertilizer already a challenge. What else is leading to what we are seeing today?
The seed. Because it's certified seed, they had to import the seed. And then even the domestic seed producers, they engage them to produce the seed, and they don't pay them. If you ask them today, they have not paid them. They are owing them, you know, and the fertilizer has to be imported. And you see, when you also, and the smuggling, you recall that in 2021, the ministry itself came out to tell us that smuggling had taken a new dimension, such that even animals were involved in the smuggling.
Wow.
And then,
So
then they mentioned the donkeys.
Yes. Hold on with that thought. We'll come back. The animals, the donkeys, and all that. But we want to take you quickly to the floor of Parliament. And the minority leader raises some questions. We want to find out whether it's to do with the budget or what else he's raising. So we'll pick that feed quickly, and then we'll come back to the 3 fine gentlemen I have with me for our budget coverage.
Of the budget statement and economic policy. They could either come before the presentation or after the presentation. So whatever your pleasure is, except to note that on the other paper, it's stated to be presented by the Minister responsible for Finance before the presentation. And since they are not going to, it's not going to take any time. In a minute it will be over. So, Mr. Speaker, if you could allow that before the presentation of the budget. Never lose the shape.
Honorable leaders, I have a challenge because these are products of the budget statement and economic policy of the government. It stated clearly there that they are as part of the presentation. And if they are laid now, I have to refer them to committees of the House before the budget is presented. I think the proper thing is that the budget should be presented, and these are part of the offshoots, the consequences of the budget statement. Then they are laid and then are referred to the committees. I think that is a better way to go than Minister, please, item 7. Motion. Minister responsible for Finance. You are at liberty to use the
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that this Honorable House, Mr. Speaker, approves the budget statement and economic policy of the government for the year ending 31st December 2023. I lay this document. Mr. Speaker, I would proceed to read the budget. Right Honorable Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, on the authority of the President of the Republic of Ghana and in accordance with the requirements under Article 179 of the 1992 Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, I present to you the 2023 budget statement and economic policy of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House approves the budget statement and economic policy of the Government of Ghana for the year ending 31st December 2023. I also respectfully submit to this House the following statutory reports: the 2022 annual report on the petroleum funds pursuant to Section 48 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act 2011, Act 815 as amended, and the 2022 report on the utilization of the African Union levies pursuant to Section 7 of the African Union Import Levies Act 2017, Act 952. Mr. Speaker, this budget speech is an abridged version of the 2023 budget statement and economic policy of government. I request the Hansard Department to capture the entire budget statement and economic policy of government for the year ending 31st December 2023. Mr. Speaker, at the outset, permit me to thank you personally, the leadership of Parliament, honorable members of this august House, for your individual and collective support, understanding and cooperation the past 6 years that I have had the honor and privilege to be the Minister responsible for finance. As we are all fully aware, a lot has happened this year in the economy, and more so in recent weeks over my role in the management of the economy. These are very erratic times, and on behalf of the President of the Republic and for myself in particular, I'm eternally grateful, first, to the leadership of the New Patriotic Party and the majority leadership and caucus of this House, and to the minority caucus of the National Democratic Congress in Parliament. I thank you on your decision yesterday to participate fully in the process of passing this budget. And to quote, you stressed how I quote, also mindful you are of the timeliness regarding the IMF negotiations and the crucial role a timely presentation of the 2023 budget will play in the advancement of Ghana's case in the negotiations with the fund. I thank you. I wish to assure this House of my strong commitment and unflinching cooperation in our collective efforts to secure an historic IMF program very soon, a program that would assist the country in its post-COVID recovery efforts. Our disagreements notwithstanding, what should never be in doubt, especially in the eyes and ears of the general public, is our common desire to serve the Republic. Our democracy is richer for it. Let me quote Simon Bolivar: "In the unity of our nation rests the glorious future of our peoples." But Mr. Speaker, the President of the Republic, who is in Qatar, enjoins us to remember Nehemiah when he said, "Let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and will not be in disgrace." And the people replied, "Let us start rebuilding." So they began the good work. Mr. Speaker, the year 2022 will go down as one of the most difficult and eventful years in the economic history of our country, while we continue to deal with the devastating had to contend with the Ukraine war. What has resulted in unprecedented global crisis, ravaging all currencies and historic living and inflation levels. In the midst of these really challenging times, Parliament has in many instances supported government's programs presented to this House, the eventual passage of the E-Levy Act, the Fees and Charges Act, the Exemptions Act, and the 750 million Afri-Exim loan, among others. These attest to the support received from this august House. At the same time, the exceptional challenges that the electronic levy bill encountered months before it was passed also attest to the challenges that we must be mindful of going forward. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to express a deep appreciation of government to the various stakeholders, including employers' association, labor unions, civil society, faith-based organizations, Association of Ghana Industries, Ghana Union of Trade Association, bankers, academia, and think tanks and the media for the support we received throughout the year, as well as the inputs that have informed and enriched our policy choices. It is, Mr. Speaker, when God's people live together in unity, the Lord bestows the blessings. Mr. Speaker, a year ago, I came to present a budget with significant revenue measures to tackle our fiscal difficulties, finance the transformative agenda of government, and sustain the post-COVID-19 recovery. However, what started as a political disagreement over revenue measures in this House triggered a series of events that significantly undermined the credibility of our budget, consequently leading to serious economic challenges as investor confidence hit a new low. This manifested in credit rating downgrades, which triggered the closure of Ghana's access to the international capital markets, tightening domestic financing conditions, and increasing cost of borrowing. The combined effects of the developments contributed to the rapid depreciation of the cedi and compounded the high debt service levels. Mr. Speaker, our inability to access the international capital markets meant that for the first time in our administration, we did not have the foreign currency to complement our foreign exchange earnings. We have had to make strenuous efforts to meet our import bill, which exceeds $10 billion annually. Considering our low foreign earnings, it has been difficult to meet our import requirements, including crude oil and petroleum products, of about $400 million a month. At the same time, the Ministry of Finance still needs to find about $1 billion annually to keep our lights in our homes and workplaces on. Mr. Speaker, the demand for foreign exchange to support our unbridled demand for imports undermines and weakens the value of the cedi. This contributed to the depreciation of the cedi, which has lost about 53.8% of its value since the beginning of this year, compared to the average 7% annual depreciation of the cedi between 2017 and 2021. The current year's depreciation, which is driving the high cost of goods and services for everyone, is clearly an aberration and a very expensive one indeed. The increases in fuel prices, diesel currently above 20 cedis a litre and petrol 16.8 cedis a litre, has led to increases in prices of most goods and services. Inflation, which we managed to bring down from 15.4% at the end of 2016 to 7.9% at the end of 2019, and remained in single digits till the pandemic hit in March 2020, is now 40.4%. It is not only the individuals and households who are adversely affected by the depreciation of the cedi. For us at the Ministry of Finance, the depreciation of the cedi seriously affects our ability to effectively manage our debt. Indeed, our stock of debt has increased by 93 billion Ghana cedis this year alone due to the depreciation of the cedi since the beginning of 2022. Even as the state struggles to raise sufficient revenue, high inflation rates continues to eat away the already meager wages of the average Ghanaian. The lesson from this relapse in macroeconomic stability makes us even more determined as your government to permanently restructure and transform this economy and build resilience. Mr. Speaker, we have been honest with Ghanaians about the economic challenges that the country is facing. His Excellency the President pointed out that never have so many malevolent forces come together in a perfect storm to so dramatically impact our lives. The current challenges on the back of 2 difficult years since March 2020 have really tested our people and our resolve. We empathize greatly with all Ghanaians for the undue pressures this has placed on their livelihoods. We want to commend all of you for your forbearance during these difficult times. We are confident, though, that together and with God on our side, we will turn things around. On behalf of His Excellency the President, let me assure all Ghanaians that government is working to change this negative narrative and demonstrate our resilience as a people and our ability to rebuild for a better future. We have demonstrated this many times in our country, but more recently between 2017 and 2019, we have resolved that in the next 2 years, government will work with you all with a restless determination to turn around this economy. Mr. Speaker, in a few years, the Black Stars will be playing their first game in the 2022 FIFA World Cup tournament in Qatar. It is clear that we stand united as a nation behind our Black Stars. A successful passage of the 2023 budget, a successful conclusion of negotiations with the IMF, and making Ghana's performance in Qatar 2022 the most successful. That is winning the cup not only for the country, but for any African side on the World Cup stage. Will, I dare say, bring this most challenging year to a very successful end. To this, Mr. Speaker, we pray, as the Bible says, behold, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. For there the Lord commands the blessings. Mr. Speaker, events since March 2022 have taught us the pervasive volatility of our world today and the wisdom in the vision of President Akufo-Addo to reset our economy through industrialization. This budget results our resolve to reset the economy and restore macroeconomic stability. But to do so, we need the support of the people of Ghana and the cooperation and approval of this Parliament. Our goal now is to significantly enhance revenues, significantly cut down the cost of running government, significantly expand local production, invest more to protect the poor and vulnerable, continue expanding access to good roads and technology, education and health for every Ghanaian everywhere in Ghana and the diaspora. Mr. Speaker, this budget is therefore anchored on a 7-point agenda aimed at restoring macroeconomic stability and accelerating our economic transformation as articulated in the Post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth, PCPEG. These comprise an agenda to 1. Aggressively mobilize domestic revenue, 2. Streamline and rationalize expenditures, 3. Boost local productive capacity, 4. Promote and diversify exports, 5. Protect the poor and vulnerable, 6. Expand digital and climate-responsive fiscal infrastructure, and 7. Implement structural and public sector reforms. To achieve these, there are 3 critical imperatives: successfully negotiating a strong IMF program, coordinating an equitable debt operations program, and attracting significant green investments. This will enable us to generate substantial revenue, create needed fiscal space for the provision of essential public services, and facilitate the implementation of the PCPEG program to revitalize and transform the economy. Mr. Speaker, we will undertake the following actions, initiatives, and interventions under the 7-point agenda. To aggressively mobilize domestic revenue will, among others, 1. Increase VAT rate by 2.5% to directly support our roads and digitalization agenda. Fast-track the implementation of the Unified Property Rate Platform Program in 2023, and review the E-Levy Act, and more specifically, reduce the headline rate from 1.5% to 1% of the transaction value, as well as the removal of the daily threshold. To boost local productive capacity, we will, among others, cut the imports of public sector institutions that rely on imports, either for inputs or consumption, by 50%, and would work with the Ghana Audit Service and Internal Audit Agency to ensure compliance, support the aggressive production of strategic subsidies, including the list disclosed at the President's last address to the nation, support large-scale agriculture and agribusiness interventions through the Development Bank of Ghana and ADB Bank, introduce policies for the protection and incubation of newly formed domestic industries to allow them to make the goods produced here competitive for local consumption and also for exports. To promote exports, we will, among others, expand our productive capacity in the rail sector of the economy and actively encourage the consumption of locally produced rice, poultry, vegetable oil, and fruit juice, ceramic tiles, among others. To pursue efficiency in government expenditures, we will, among others, implement the government directives on expenditure measures, integrate procurement approval process with GIFMIS to ensure that projects approved are aligned with budget allocation, review key government programs to reflect relevance, promote efficiency, and ensure that value for money is achieved in all sectors, including OGM, and review the efficiency of statutory funds. To implement structural and public sector reforms, will, among others, impose a debt limit, on non-concessional financing, undertake major structural reforms in the public sector by reviewing the operations of 36 state-owned enterprises, 8 special purpose vehicles, 90 joint venture companies, 38 regulatory institutions, 68 statutory bodies, and 6 subvented organizations. Enforce compliance with legal and regulatory framework on foreign exchange, initiate measures to overhaul the tax structure in the extractive industry, expand the gold purchase program by the Bank of Ghana to support foreign exchange reserve accumulation, promote an LBMA certified gold refinery in Ghana, and promote local currency stability. To safeguard social protection programs, will, among others, expand social protection programs such as LEAP, school feeding, and NHIS for the vulnerable and socially excluded. Mr. Speaker, last year, I presented our plan to get us back to pre-pandemic macro stability and growth levels. More importantly, I shared the President's strategy and unemployment. The strategy was anchored on building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation through fiscal consolidation and job creation. I'm happy to report that we have piloted the Youth Start program and launched the district-level program. Mr. Speaker, we now have the commitment of our banks and development partners and are confident that the 10 billion Ghana CD program with 1 million jobs will be achieved in the next 3 years. We are now embarking on a journey to fundamentally reposition our economy with the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth, PCPE, to be supported by the IMF, the World Bank, and other friendly sovereigns and the private sector, both domestic and international. As our blueprint, we are mindful that it will require broadly reposition our economy with the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth, PCPE, to be supported by the IMF, the World Bank, and other friendly sovereigns and the private sector, both domestic and international. As our blueprint, we are mindful that it will require broad-based contributions and sacrifices. There will be costs to the fiscal adjustment that we intend to make in the coming years to sustain our stability, recovery, and eventual transformation. My pledge to this House, Mr. Speaker, is that there will be fiscal discipline, that every peso that we ask the Ghanaian people and businesses operating in Ghana to contribute will be spent well. The challenges we face are daunting, but we must not lose sight of the greatest strength of being Ghanaian: resilience, entrepreneurial zeal, faith, courage, solidarity, and hope. I therefore ask all of us to play a constructive role in getting our nation fully back on track. Ours is a country with real prospects and the challenges notwithstanding. Ghana will rise again, and my faith is premised on the fact that a lot had been achieved, especially over the course of the Fourth Republic, and our policy as outlined in this budget to reset the economy, if supported, would ensure that, indeed, we have not wasted the current global crisis, but used it to make our economy stronger and the progress and prosperity of our people even more assured. Global economic developments and outlook. Economic growth and inflation. Mr. Speaker, the global environment is fragile and the outlook remains uncertain. Global economic activity in 2022 has slowed down more broadly and sharply than anticipated. Economic growth in emerging markets and developing economies is expected to slow down from 6.7% in 2021 to 3.7% in 2022, with a similar pattern expected in 2023. In sub-Saharan Africa, growth is expected to slow down to 3.6% in 2022 and 3.7% in 2023, from 4.7% in 2021 due to low investments and a worsening trade balance. Overall, global inflation has risen, driven largely by increases in energy and food prices. Inflation in emerging and developing economies has also risen from an average 5.9% in 2021 to 9.9% in 2022. The war in Ukraine has further heightened inflationary pressures. The exchange rates across the major international currencies depreciated rapidly by the end of the third quarter of 2022. As of 23rd November 2, the Ghana cedi depreciated cumulatively by 54.2% against the US dollar. Similarly, the Ghana cedi depreciated cumulatively by 48.5% against the British pound. Mr. Speaker, I now present to this august House the provisional macroeconomic performance for the first 3 quarters of 2022 based on available data for the period. To better assess the macroeconomic development for the first 3 quarters of the year, permit me to restate the macroeconomic targets set for 2022 as presented in the 2022 Mid-Year Fiscal Policy Review. Overall GDP growth of 3.7%, non-oil real GDP growth of 4.3%, and inflation of 28.5%, overall fiscal deficit of 6.6% of GDP, primary surplus of 0.4% of GDP, and gross international reserves sufficient to cover at least 3.5 months of imports of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, data on the performance of the economy at the end of the third quarter highlights the continuous adverse impact of the challenging global and domestic environment on the economy. As I indicated earlier, these developments have manifested through rapid exchange rate depreciation, high inflation, unsustainable debt burden, fiscal stress, and external sector shocks, among others, despite the monetary and fiscal policy interventions that were deployed in the first 3 quarters of the year. Mr. Speaker, the economic performance for the first 3 quarters of the year is summarized as follows. Mr. Speaker, provisional GDP data from Ghana Statistical Service published in September 2022 indicate that overall real GDP for the first half of 2022 recorded an average year-on-year growth of 4%, 3.4% in quarter 1 2022 and 4.8% in quarter 2 2022 respectively. Non-oil GDP expanded by 4.1% and 6.2% in the first and second quarters in 2022 respectively. The latest data indicates that headline inflation accelerated to 40.4% in October 2022 from 37.2% in September and 33.9% in August. The rise in October inflation was broad-based, driven by both food and non-food prices. The monetary policy rate has increased by 1,000 basis points from 14.5% to 24.5% since the beginning of the year, as the central bank deployed its monetary policy tools to anchor inflation expectations. Developments on the money market broadly showed rising interest rates across the yield curve. For example, the discount rate on the 91-day instrument has increased to 32.5% as of today from 12.5% in December 2021. The public debt to GDP ratio stood at 75.9% at the end of September 2022, up from 76.7% at the end of December 2021. Gross international reserves stood at $6.591 billion, equivalent to 2.9 months of import cover at the end of September 2022, from a stock position of $9.7 billion, equivalent to 4.3 months import cover at the end of December 2022. Fiscal developments. Mr. Speaker, the 2022 mid-year fiscal policy review revised the 2022 fiscal framework against the backdrop of unfavorable global and domestic developments. The fiscal deficit targets was revised to 6.6% of GDP, down from the 7.4% set in the 2022 budget. Similarly, the primary balance target was revised upwards to a surplus of 0.4% of GDP from a surplus of 0.1%. This was on the back of revisions in GDP projections, adjustment in the expected yield from the 2022 revenue measures, adjustments to reflect the 30% discretionary expenditure cuts, adjustment in interest rates, and adjustment in allocation for compensation of employees to incorporate a 15% cost of living allowance, adjustment in exchange rate on account of higher depreciation, and adjustment to the benchmark crude oil price. Mr. Speaker, provisional data on government fiscal operations for January to September 2022 shows a shortfall in revenue performance and a faster execution of expenditures. This resulted in an overall budget deficit of $41.7 billion, 7% of GDP, against a program deficit target of $36.7 billion, 6.2% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance for the period was a deficit of $9.6 billion, or 1.6% of GDP, against a deficit target of $5.8 billion, cedis 1% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grants amounted to $65.4 billion, 11% of GDP, compared with a target of $67.3 billion, 11.4% of GDP, and the $49.1 billion, 10.7% of GDP recorded in the corresponding period in 2021. The outturn for total revenue and grants represents a shortfall of 2.8% compared to the period's target and year-on-year growth of 33.2%. The shortfall in revenue stemmed from the less robust performance recorded in all the revenue handles for the period. Mr. Speaker, domestic revenue for the period amounted to $64.6 billion, 10.9% of GDP, falling below the target of $66.5 billion, 11.2% of GDP, by 2.9%. The outturn, however, represents a year-on-year growth of 34% and constituted 98.8% of revenue and grants. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure, including arrears, clearance, and discrepancies for the period amounted to $109.4 billion, 18.5% of GDP, above the target of $103.9 billion, 17.6% of GDP, by 5.2%. Compensation of employees amounted to $27.2 billion Ghana cedis, 4.6% of GDP, 2.9% below the budgetary provision of $27.9 billion, 4.7% of GDP. The wage bill constituted 91.3% of the total compensation and amounted to $24.7 billion. Interest payments for the period amounted to $32.1 million, 5.4% of GDP, against a target of 30.9 billion, 5.2% of GDP, reflecting the higher cost of borrowing and the adverse impact of the currency depreciation on external interest. Domestic interest payments constituted 78% of total interest payments for the period. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal operations for the period resulted in an overall budget deficit of 44 billion Ghana cedis, 7.4% of GDP, against a target of 36.7 billion, 6.2% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance for the period was a deficit of 11.9 billion, 2% of GDP, against a deficit target of 5.7 billion, 1% of GDP. The fiscal deficit for the period was financed mainly from domestic sources, amounting to 37.5 billion, 6.3% of GDP, accounting for 85.2% of the total financing. Foreign financing for the period amounted to 6.5 billion, 1.1% of GDP, and accounted for the remaining 14.8% of the financing. Public debt developments, January to September 2022. Mr. Speaker, provisional debt data as at end September 2022 shows a significant increase in Ghana's public debt, largely due to exogenous factors. The end September 2022 provisional figures indicate that total gross public debt stood at 467.4 billion Ghana cedis, 48.9 billion US dollars, representing approximately 75.9% of GDP. The domestic debt component is 195.7 billion Ghana cedis, which is 31.8% of GDP, whilst external is 271.7 billion Ghana cedis, representing 44.15% of GDP. The increase in the domestic debt is largely on account of rising interest costs. Domestic debt as a share of total public debts reduced from 51.6% in 2021 to 41.9% as at 2022. Mr. Speaker, the external debt as a percentage 8.1% as end September 2022. The sharp growth in the external debt stock is largely driven by the depreciation of the local currency. The depreciation of the Ghana cedi added 93.9 billion to the external debt stock. Overall debt accumulation increased from 20.7% in 2021 to 32% as at end September 2022, reflecting the impact of the depreciation of the Ghana cedi on the external debt side. Mr. Speaker, the external sector performance in the outlook will depend largely on the quick resolution of the Russian-Ukraine war and the outcome of recession fears in advanced economies. The thrust of the stream of the external sector will focus on rebuilding external buffers, enough to cover at least 3.5 months of imports of goods and services, pushing the economy against adverse external shocks. This will be underpinned by, among others, bilateral support and strong remittance inflows. Mr. Speaker, the Bank of Ghana will continue to monitor inflation development and respond appropriately to contain price pressures. Monetary policy will focus on using the monetary policy rate to, among others, contain inflation pressures. Since August 2022, the Bank of Ghana has successfully been working with the mining firms, international oil companies, and their bankers to purchase all foreign exchange arising from the voluntary repatriation. Update on Ghana's engagement with the fund for a fund-supported program. Mr. Speaker, since government announced its engagement with the International Monetary Fund for a supported program on 1st July 2022, made substantial progress. The fund assured government of its strong commitment and support in these difficult times. Mr. Speaker, government and the IMF agreed on program objectives, a preliminary fiscal adjustment path, debt strategy, and financing required for the program to be in line with the government's post-COVID-19 program for economic growth. The PCPEC is government's blueprint to restore macroeconomic stability promote debt sustainability, sustain economic recovery, and support structural reforms. Mr. Speaker, guided by the medium-term policy objectives, the following macroeconomic targets are set for the medium term 2023 to 2026. Overall real GDP growth at an average rate of 4.3%, non-oil average growth of 4%, inflation back to within the target band of 8 plus or minus 2%, and a primary balance on commitment basis to average 0.8% of GDP in 2023 to 2026, and gross international reserves to cover at least 4 months of imports. Mr. Speaker, based on the overall macroeconomic objectives and the medium-term targets, the following macroeconomic targets are set for the 2023 fiscal year. Overall real GDP growth of 2.8%, non-oil growth of 3%, end December inflation rate of 18.9%, primary balance on commitment basis of 0.7%, and gross international reserves to cover not less than 3.3 months of imports. Mr. Speaker, on resource mobilization for 2023, total revenue and grants is projected at 143.9 billion Ghana cedis, 18% of GDP, and is underpinned by permanent revenue measures, largely tax revenue measures, amounting to 1.35% of GDP as outlined in the revenue measures. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure, including clearance of arrears, is projected at 205.4 billion or 25.6% of GDP. This estimate shows a contraction of 0.3 percentage points of GDP in primary expenditures, commitment basis that is, compared to the projected outturn in 2022, and a demonstration of government's resolve to consolidate its public finances. Mr. Speaker, the following projections underpin the resource allocation for 2023. Compensation of employees is projected at 44.9 billion, 5.6% of GDP. Use of goods and services also projected at 8 billion, 1% of GDP. Interest payments is projected at 52.6 billion, 6.6% of GDP. Grants and other government units is estimated at 30.1 billion, 3.8% of GDP. Capital expenditure is projected at 27.7 billion, 3.5% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, other expenditures mainly comprising energy sector levies, transfers, and energy sector payment shortfalls is estimated at 26.7 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, based on the estimates for the total revenue and grants and total expenditures, including arrears clearance, the overall budget balance to be financed is a fiscal deficit of 1.5 billion, equivalent to 7.7% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance, the deficit of 8.9 billion, equivalent to 1.1% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, I wish to notify you that budget items such as interest payments, amortization, and financing will be adjusted accordingly once government's debt management strategy and financing to be provided by international partners in the context of the fund-supported program have been finalized. Revenue measures. Mr. Speaker, government has consistently indicated its intention to improve the revenue collection effort by leveraging technology to enhance tax administration, taxable persons, and improve tax compliance. Mr. Speaker, government has received several proposals for review of the electronic transfer levy and is working closely with all stakeholders to evaluate the impact of the levy in order to decide on the next line of action, which would include revision of the various exclusions. As a first step, however, the headline rate will be reduced to 1% of the transaction value alongside the removal of the daily threshold. To this end, the income tax regime will undergo reforms to, among others, review the upper limits for vehicle benefits and introduce an additional income tax bracket of 35%. Mr. Speaker, on expenditure measures will also be pursued to support the fiscal consolidation process. In this regard, it is proposed that government will reduce the threshold on earmarked funds from the current 25% of tax revenue to 17.5% of tax revenue, migrate all earmarked funds onto the GIFMIS platform, and ensure they use the GIFMIS platform to process all their revenue and expenditure transactions, continue the 30% cut in the salaries of the President, Vice President, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, MMDCEs, and political office holders, including those of state-owned enterprises, whilst also ensuring efficiency at the OGM. Also want to place a cap on salary adjustment of SOEs to be lower than negotiated base pay increases on single spine salary structure for each year. Fiscal contingency planning. Mr. Speaker, given the uncertainties about the macroeconomic environment, government stands ready to deploy additional tools if fiscal outturns require further interventions. On the revenue side, some of the measures that we identified for the medium-term revenue strategy being designed by government and in the context of the fund program could be implemented early on. On the spending side, MDA's budget allocations for goods and services or domestic CapEx will be strictly controlled by the quarterly budget allotment system. Mr. Speaker, the present economic challenges have heightened the need to transform our economy through a renewed focus on boosting local capacity for increased export promotion to expand job creation while protecting the vulnerable. Government is therefore taking active steps to address the impact of these economic shocks on Ghanaians through the 7-point agenda to restore macroeconomic stability and accelerate our economic transformation as articulated in the post-COVID-19 program for economic growth. Mr. Speaker, on developing local capacity for production, as I've already indicated, Ghana's heavy dependence on imports places tremendous pressures on the cedi, creating an unfavorable balance of payments position. On average, Ghana's imports bill exceeds $10 billion annually and is accounted for by a diverse range of items that include iron, steel, aluminium, sugar, rice, fish, poultry, palm, oil, cement, fertilizer, pharmaceuticals, fruit juices, and even toilet roll and toothpicks. We currently have the capacity as a country to locally produce items that account for about 45% of the value of our imports. These include rice, fish, sugar, poultry, cement, pharmaceuticals, jute bar, computers, etc. To this end, government will target these products for import for export promotion by supporting the private sector through partnerships with existing and prospective businesses to expand, rehabilitate, and establish manufacturing plants. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Cares Obatampa program. Mr. Speaker, it has been 2 years since the launch of the Ghana Cares program to mitigate the severe impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. Significant achievement has been made with the implementation of agreed activities despite the current macroeconomic challenges. Mr. Speaker, the high food prices and pressures on the local currency validates the current focus of the Ghana Cares program to bolster productive and export capacity of the private sector. To this end, an economic enclave project will focus on providing support for the cultivation of up to 110,000 acres of land in the Greater Accra, Ashanti, Central, Savannah, and OT regions are being pursued. Mr. Speaker, this initiative, which seeks to expand our production and productivity in rice, tomato, maize, vegetables, and poultry, is being led and coordinated by the Millennium Development Authority. In collaboration with other government institutions, such as the Ministries of Food and Agriculture, Energy, the Ghana Irrigation Development Authority, 48 Engineers Regiment of the Ghana Armed Forces under the Ministry of Defense, the National Entrepreneurial Innovation Program, and the National Service Secretariat and Ghana Enterprises Agency. Mr. Speaker, consistent with the private sector-led approach, the program will engage interested private sector actors to expand an agricultural production and processing in the Asuchari Chopoli Economic Enclave area based on a partnership framework. The same approach will be adopted for the lands secured in the Ashanti Central, Savannah, and Oti region to reach the 100 Group Limited to explore the feasibility of producing paper locally using the byproducts of the cultivated rice in the economic enclave at Asuchari as raw material. Envisage that the imports of paper will be replaced and more jobs created. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the enclave project, Ghana Cares program in 2023 will continue to offer catalytic support in the following targeted areas. To this end, the program will work with funding to interested and targeted farmers, support the Ministry of Food and Agriculture to adopt and deploy the farmer registration database for the farmer input subsidy programs to enhance efficiency, support the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization, a continental tech hub to improve knowledge in technology and innovation by the youth in collaboration with the University of Ghana, ensure the operationalization of the foundry under a sustainable private sector management framework, provide interest rate subsidies and direct financing, including supporting prioritized sectors in the rural economy through the ARB Apex Bank and its network of banks as agreed under the AFDB supported post-COVID skills and productivity enhancement project. You start. Mr. Speaker, in fulfillment of our pledge of building an entrepreneurial nation, the implementation of the Youth Start program began this year. The program was successfully piloted with 70 beneficiaries and an amount of 1.98 million was disbursed to support youth-led below the age of 40 years SMEs in poultry, agro-processing, ICT, textiles, and food processing sectors. Government has successfully signed an MOU with the Ghana Association of Bankers and 11 other commercial banks for the implementation of the commercial component of the program. Mr. Speaker, a launch for the District Entrepreneurship Program, DEP, component of the program was held on 14 November 2022 and is expected that the launch of the commercial component of the program will occur by the end of this year to enable qualified beneficiaries access support. Mr. Speaker, the One District, One Factory remarkable progress in 2022. To date, a total of 296 1D1 web projects are at various stages of implementation, out of which 126 are currently operational. 143 are under construction, and 27 are pipeline projects. In 2023, government will intensify support to existing and new manufacturing enterprises of technical assistance, credit facilitation, and access to electricity and other infrastructure. Automotive Assembly Program. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the Automotive Assembly Program, government has developed a new components manufacturing policy which seeks to support the local production and supply of components and spare parts for the automotive industry. Ministry of Trade and Industry will launch and commence implementation of the policy in 2023, which is expected to expand job creation. Mr. Speaker, the recent global crisis has severely disrupted inorganic fertilizer supply chains. This has resulted in sharp increases in prices and making it difficult for farmers to access the commodity and thus threatening food security. The Ministry of Food and Agriculture is intensifying efforts to promote the local production and use of organic fertilizers. Further to this, under the subsidy program, the Ministry has increased the quota for organic fertilizer suppliers to cover the shortfall in supply of inorganic fertilizers. Additionally, government is facilitating the establishment and the expansion of local organic fertilizer production plants with support from Exim Bank. African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Mr. Speaker, we will pursue strategically opportunities that ensure that we take full advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, AFCFTA, as part of efforts to pursue an export-led economic recovery. The Ministry of Trade and Industry is working with over 200 Ghanaian companies to facilitate their entry into the African market, including about 70 1D1F companies. Additionally, the AFCFTA Guided Trade Initiative has been launched to start commercially meaningful trade. Amongst others, FTA focus on value key export sector stakeholders. Export trade houses will be established in selected markets to promote made in Ghana products brands, including the completion of the first ETH in Kenya. Additionally, opportunities will be created for local Ghanaian businesses and investors in partnership with them. Now, Mr. Speaker, government through the Development Bank of Ghana has established 500 million Ghana Cedi Special Credit Program, the DBG Emergency Economic Program, DEEP, to support businesses in agribusiness value chain over the next 5 years. The priority sectors are poultry, rice and cereals, pharmaceutical manufacturing, tourism, textiles and garments for investments to help build economic resilience. Mr. Speaker, to support SMEs with equity funding, DBG is also in the process of establishing a private equity fund with an initial capitalization of 30 million Ghana cedis or 400 million, 30 million US dollars or 400 million Ghana cedis. DBG has fully onboarded 4 participating financial institutions and will engage other financial institutions to expand its loan channels. A total of 7 loans amounting to 245 million was disbursed to SMEs, saving over 1,000 jobs. DBG has partnered with a PFI to build a digital lending platform to shorten the processing time for lending to SMEs and increase its ability to reach a lot more businesses across the country. Mr. Speaker, the National Insurance Commission is spearheading the development of agricultural insurance for farmers through the Ghana Agriculture Insurance Pool. GAIP provides traditional agriculture insurance and index-based weather insurance products to commercial farmers and smallholder farmers. An estimated $400 million in agriculture insurance will be extended to eligible farmers in 2023. Mr. Speaker, as part of efforts to ensure power is affordable for industrial, commercial, and residential use, government has substantially completed a renegotiation and restructuring exercise of power purchase agreement with 6 operational independent power producers, namely Car Power, Sempower, Early Power, Twin City Energy, AXA Energy, and Senate Energy. Government, of course, is looking for the resources to fund these agreements. Government has also pursued produce natural total linked to the national grid as of September 2022, the Ministry of 400 towns under SHEP 4, SHEP 5, and 10 key projects in 2023. Mr. Speaker, substantial progress has been made on coastal fishing ports and landing sites. This has been made in the development of 12 coastal fish landing sites and 2 fishing ports along the coast of Ghana, namely Azim and Diskov in the western region, Mori, Fansamande, Kumfi, Mumford, Winneba, Senyabreku, Gomoafete and Mena in the Central Region, Teshi Osu and Jamestown in the Greater Accra Region, and Keta in the Volta Region. Mr. Speaker, overall, the project is about 95% complete and will ensure safe launching and landing of artisanal fishing canoes and promote hygienic environmental conditions. Mr. Speaker, on climate change, global warming poses major threats to the economies of climate-vulnerable countries like Ghana. According to the World Bank report, use job for nature swaps, as well as increased private sector investments to accelerate our transition to low carbon growth and finance our climate action measures. Mr. Speaker, I can report that Ghana has assumed the presidency from 2020 of the climate vulnerable finance of governments. Government will leverage this opportunity to accelerate our climate agenda, which is outlined in Ghana's climate prosperity plans. Social protection. Mr. Speaker, even amidst the current difficulties, we remain committed to implementing Ghana's social protection programs. We will not renege on our responsibilities towards the vulnerable and socially excluded, and the implementation of our various social protection programs will be expanded. Mr. Speaker, the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty program, LEAP, has since its inception in 2008 supported extremely poor and vulnerable households, increasing beneficiary coverage from 144,000 in 2015 to 344,000 households, comprising 1.8 million individuals as of September 2022. Government is committed to expanding coverage to all 2.5 million extreme poor individuals as estimated by the Ghana Living Standard Survey by 2024, while improving efficiency through digitalization and assessments. The government will, in 2023, increase the value of the LEAP grant from the average of 41.75 Ghana cedis per household to about 95.19 cedis bi-monthly. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana School Feeding Program, which
to take the chair temporarily. I'll be back soon.
Thank you.
Every is a chair.
Yes, Minister, let's go on. Yes, Honourable Minister, let's go on.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker,
Honourable members.
Mr. Speaker, in 2023, the feeding grant will be increased to reflect the current cost of living. The program will also strengthen domestic production by sourcing locally produced food from the National Buffer Stock Company. Capitation grant. Mr. Speaker, fees levies in all public basic schools to steady increases in enrollment over the years. Mr. Speaker, government will continue to strengthen monitoring to address teething challenges in the implementation of the policy, which include timely release of the grants, misuse of funds, transparency, and poor bookkeeping and value of grant amounts. Mr. Speaker, in fulfillment of government's commitment to improve road infrastructure, the Ministry of Roads and Highways continued its nationwide road and bridge constructive program. Works on the La Beach Road project and the construction of a 3-tier interchange at Nungwa barrier are progressing steadily. Works on the interchange currently stand at 62%. Construction of the Kumasi Lake roads and drainage extension projects is almost complete and stands at 97%. Work is ongoing on the 17.85 kilometer Ofanko and Sawam dual carriage road, which is scheduled to be completed in May 2024. Mr. Speaker, dualization on the Tema Flao and the Tema Kosombo road has commenced. Works are ongoing on the rehabilitation of Asimfusu, Asimfrasu road, including the dualization of 1.2 kilometers of Asimfusu Township roads into a 4-lane carriageway is at 53% completion. Additionally, work on the reconstruction of Bichem, Techimanchia, Akumadan, Agona Kwanta Road, Taka roads at 21% and 7% completion respectively. Work on phase 2 of the Obechevi-Lamte Circle interchange and ancillary work is at 71% completion. Additionally, construction of the flyover over the Accra-Tema motorway from the Flower Port runabout is 56% complete. Mr. Speaker, to improve connectivity in the areas cut off by waterways, work on the construction of 50 number prefabricated bridges continued in 2022. Progress of the new bridge being constructed over River Pra to separate vehicular traffic from the rail along the Triple Prasu-Dunka Road is at 87% completion. Mr. Speaker, the critical regional and interregional road projects initiated in 2019 are at various stages of completion. Completed projects include upgrading of the Gulukwati-Vli Road, upgrade of Insuta Beposolo 3, rehabilitation of Nkonja Rompong Kwame Krom, partial reconstruction of Bojwase Adeso, and resealing of Talame Salaga Road. Progress on the following roads, among others, have achieved significant progress. Upgrades of Navrongo Naga Road, upgrading of Wa Bulanga Yala Road, upgrading of Salaga Ekumdepe Pandai Road, Pandai Nkachina Road, rehabilitation of Atebubu Kwame Damsu roads, upgrading of Anyan Kwanta Obwasi Road, rehabilitation of New Abrim Ofosokuma Road, upgrading of Sepiriaso Akontombra Road, upgrading of Akrodie Sariasu Road, rehabilitation of selected roads in Greater Accra. Mr. Speaker, contract works under the Master Project Support Agreement of Sino-Hydro Corporation Limited are stages of completion. Tamale Intergent Road, 100% complete. Western Region and Cape Coast Inner City Roads, 100% complete. Upgrading of selected feeder roads in Ashanti and Western Region, 100% complete. Construction of Hohoi, Jasikan, Dodi, Pepeso, 100% complete. PTC Runabout Intergent Project Takrade, 60%. Sunyani Inner City Roads, 63%. Kumasi Inner City Roads, 10%. Mr. Speaker, in 2023, a number of pipeline projects which are at various stages of preparation will be pursued. This includes construction of Accra-Kumasi Road and Yunnan Bypass, construction of Accra-Kumasi Road, Konongo Bypass, construction of Adedome Asikam Junction and Asuchuere Aveyimi, including 2 number interchanges at the Dufour, Adedome and Asikomi Junction, Kaswa Cape Coast dualization of Sekendia Dembra roads, Takrade Agona and Kwanta Apemanim, construction of bridge over the Volta River at Bolivo, Buepe, Ape and Daboya bridges, and also a Chamamfrom Bridge and Dipe, Ituri and Ankombra bridges. Mr. Speaker, government is pursuing the strategic decision to procure the 27.7 kilometers of the Accra-Tema motorway and extensions project through the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. A PPP concession agreement backed by an appropriate toll arrangement will be presented to Parliament for approval to facilitate its execution. Provision has also been made in the 2023 and the medium-term budget for the equity and viability gap funding required by a GIF special purpose vehicle to enable the project to start in earnest in 2023. The project will be delivered in phases. Debt exchange program. Mr. Speaker, the debt sustainability analysis based on the macroeconomic outlook has been conducted by the Ministry of Finance. It analyzes the country's capacity to finance its policy objectives and service its debts. It covers publicly guaranteed debt of central government and partial non-guaranteed debt of SOEs. The sustainability of our debt has been continuously affected by the negative impact of exchange rate depreciation, particularly on external debt, as well as the crystallization of significant contingent liabilities in recent years. The current debt sustainability analysis conducted reveals that Ghana is now considered to be in high risk of debt distress. Mr. Speaker, despite the heightened debt levels, government remains committed to ensuring that debt is brought to sustainable levels over the medium to long term. To this end, we will implement a debt exchange program to address the challenges identified in the portfolio in collaboration with all relevant stakeholders, public and development partners, and foreign bond investors. Furthermore, government will continue to strengthen its oversight of all SOEs, in particular financial and energy sectors. The reforms and discipline at the SOEs will reduce potential fiscal risk from incidents of contingent liabilities. Mr. Speaker, in line with our objective to restore debt sustainability, concessional loans will continue to be the preferred financing option for projects. We, however, recognize that there may be cases where non-concessional borrowing may be required to finance critical transformative projects. Such financing will be determined within limits that are consistent with our debt sustainability program. We inform this House at the mid-year fiscal policy review of projects that will be financed within our non-concessional borrowing limits. Accordingly, we will not publish any list of projects to be financed from external non-concessional loans in this budget, previously titled Appendix 10C. Implementation of the Cabinet Directives on Expenditure. Has approved the following directives, which takes effect from January 2023. All MDAs, MMDAs, and SOEs are directed to reduce fuel allocations to political appointees and heads of MDAs, MMDAs, and SOEs by 50%. This directive applies to all methods of fuel allocation, coupons, electronic cards, system fuel depots. Accordingly, 50% of the previous year's budget allocation for fuel shall be earmarked for official businesses pertaining to these institutions. A ban, Mr. Speaker, on the use of V8s or V6s or its equivalent except for cross-country travel. All government vehicles will be registered with GV green number plates from January 2023. Mr. Speaker, limited budgetary allocations will be granted for the purchase of vehicles. For the avoidance of doubt, purchase of new vehicles shall be restricted to locally assembled vehicles. Only essential foreign travel across governments, including SOEs, shall be allowed. No official foreign travel shall be allowed for board members. Accordingly, all government institutions should submit a travel plan for the year 2023 by mid-December of all expected travels to the Chief of Staff. As far as possible, meetings and workshops should be done within the official environment or government facilities. Government-sponsored external training and staff development activities at the Office of the President, ministries, and SOEs must be put on hold for the 2023 financial year. Reduction of expenditure on appointments, including salary freezes, together with suspension of certain allowances like housing, utilities, and clothing. A freeze on new tax waivers for foreign companies and review of tax exemptions for free zone mining, oil and gas companies. A hiring freeze for civil and public servants. No new government agency shall be established in 2023. There shall be no hampers for 2022. There shall be no printing of diaries, notepads, calendars, and other promotional merchandise by MDAs, MMDAs, and SOEs for 2024. All non-critical projects must be suspended for 2023 financial year. Mr. Speaker, government cares deeply about our people and is very concerned about the current plight and the future of our country. The 2023 budget has been prepared with high expectations for the aspiration of Ghanaians and the brighter prospects of our economy to transition into other middle income within a decade. It reflects, Mr. Speaker, our determination and resolve to confront the current daunting economic challenges facing our nation head-on and reset the economy. In the immediate term, we will work towards securing an agreement with the International Monetary Fund, execute a debt exchange program, improve the management of foreign exchange, and support our local productive capacity for food security. We are confident that the measures outlined in the 2023 budget will redirect us on the path of macroeconomic and stability and growth. Mr. Speaker, the mission ahead is for the determined and not the pessimist. We acknowledge that our people have been severely impacted by the current economic challenges. As a responsive government, we have acted swiftly and boldly by developing the PCPEC and will work with local and international partners to implement it. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 budget will focus on government resolve to structurally transform the economy. We plan to aggressively mobilize domestic revenue, boost local productive capacity, promote a diversified and vibrant value-added export sector, streamline expenditures, protect the poor and vulnerable, expand the digital and physical infrastructure with climate awareness, and, Mr. Speaker, to implement structural and public sector reforms. We will continue, Mr. Speaker, to implement the implementation of key interventions like the Youth Start program, economic enclaves, 1D, 1F, technology hubs with the limited resources that we have complemented with the support from Development Bank of Ghana. Specifically on Youth Start, we intend to support 30,000 youth, and under the economic enclaves, we intend to develop 110,000 acres of land for rice, maize, soya bean, as well as poultry. Funding will be sought from the 500 million Development Bank of Ghana fund and GOG sources. We'll also be aligning support from our development partners to boost growth in the rail sector, focusing mainly on agriculture, entrepreneurship, and value addition. Mr. Speaker, as I have indicated, it has become even more urgent to mobilize domestic revenue, especially in times like this, when our access to the international capital markets is largely closed. We urgently need to restore debt sustainability, macroeconomic stability, and grow the economy. As a responsible government, we will take the hard, unpopular, but necessary decisions to build back better and emerge stronger. Mr. Speaker, the post-COVID, we identified the need to ramp up our domestic revenue mobilization efforts to match the performance of our peers and finance our development agenda. Last year, we started with the e-levy, which has not yielded the resources as expected, and have made appropriate modifications. Mr. Speaker, we know that we have to keep the lights on at the cost of $1 billion annually. We know that we have to keep the hospitals running and ensure that over 5.5 million Ghanaians on NHIS are properly catered for. We know that we need to keep our schools running and pay the over 300,000 teachers every month. We know that we need to keep our hospitals and pay the over 119,000 nurses every month, to keep the law courts open and ensure timely access to justice, and keep the local assemblies working to deliver essential social services to our people. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister, hold on. I will see the seat to the right, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Minister, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it has also become clear that we cannot take the territorial integrity and internal cohesion of our country for granted. In the last couple of years, we have invested significantly in retooling the security sector to maintain territorial integrity, improve internal security. We have procured various equipment, including motorbikes, vehicles, forward operating bases, recruiting of security personnel, among other interventions. Mr. Speaker, our ability to continue to deliver all these critical public services will require significant resources, and we believe that together we can raise the necessary revenues to implement them. Mr. Speaker, the demand for roads has become the cry of many communities in the country. Unfortunately, with the current economic difficulties and the absence of dedicated sources of funding for roads construction, it is difficult to meet all these demands. In that regard, we are proposing the implementation of the new revenue measure. The major one is an increase in the VAT rate 2.5 percentage points to help with roads and technology improvement. This increase is expected to yield 2.7 billion, which will be used, as I mentioned, to augment funding for our road infrastructure development and digitalization. This will be complemented by a major compliance program to ensure that we derive the maximum yields from existing revenue handles. Mr. Speaker, in this budget, we have highlighted the need for robust public sector reforms to complement the existing public financial management regime. Here, the focus is to introduce private sector participation in the retail subsector of the energy sector to reduce system losses and improve delivery of services for Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, this afternoon, the senior national team, the Black Stars, will be representing our nation for the 4th time at the Football World Cup in Qatar. Let us continue to bear them up in prayer and offer our support for victory to bring this cup to Ghana. Mr. Speaker, working together after missing the last tournament, we have risen again and taking our place in the world stage. Let us, Mr. Speaker, claim this victory and claim again that victory shall be ours na abamu ewie. Mr. Speaker, we must be inspired by the re-emergence of the Black Stars on the world stage. We must work together to ensure that our economy rises again to the comfort of our people. The budget offers us a better opportunity to jointly work towards rebuilding the economy and rediscovering our providential way towards our manifest destiny of greatness. So I say again, together, let us rise. Mr. Speaker, let us not squander the opportunity to turn around and reset our economy, create a brighter medium term for our country and its people. This is indeed the time to rebuild. This is the time not to destroy and to tear down. Let us work together for our collective benefits, as is said by Nehemiah, with unity of purpose, service to the Republic, and the abiding grace of God, we shall succeed. Mr. Speaker, we are a great people. No fiano, Mr. Speaker, bahi. Mr. Speaker, no fiano, bahi. Mr. Speaker, let us go forward, believing in the assurance of the psalmist that for the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude, and I present to you the Inkabom, the unity budget. I beg to move, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, Honorable members, in accordance with Standing Order 143, debate on the motion shall stand adjourned for no less than 3 days. I also direct that part of the budget relating to ministries and constitutional bodies shall stand committed respectfully to the committees responsible for the subject matter to which the heads of the estimates relate for consideration and report in accordance with Order 144. Furthermore, any part of the budget relating to revenue and expenditure shall stand committed to the Finance Committee in accordance with Order 145. Honorable members, we will now take item 6, the presentation of papers. the following papers to be presented. 6, Roman 1 and Roman 2 are to be taken together by the minister responsible for finance. Minister, you may do so now.
Annual report on the petroleum funds for the 2022 fiscal year. Annual report on the collection and utilization of the African Union import levy for the 2022 fiscal year.
Honorable members, both reports have been duly presented and they are referred to the Finance Committee for consideration and report to the House. Honorable members, I did hear the Minister struggle to speak some Ghana. I don't know whether you heard him. But you heard Ebahi. It was not his fault. It is the way it's typed. It is not typed like Ghana. And so he was struggling to read it. Honorable members, I will now return to the leadership for guidance, if any.
Speaker, we have all heard the motion that has been moved by the Minister responsible for Finance, which motion has been moved on the authority of the President of the Republic is to present to this House the budget statement and economic policy of the Government of Ghana for the 2023 financial year. The Speaker, as we've all heard, the upshot of the presentation certainly is transparency. A very pragmatic budget that recognizes where we are as a nation, a budget to revive and reposition the country, a regulars of a work program that calls on all of us to pull together. And as the minister quoted the prophet Nehemiah, let us rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. In this context, the walls of Accra and indeed Ghana together. Mr. Speaker, I believe as patriots, we shall all respond. Let us start rebuilding. I believe that at an appropriate time and in the full recognition that we are one people in one country with a common destiny, we shall respond to regrow this country together. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House takes an adjournment until tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the forenoon, first to ponder over the presentation and also to regroup to support our Black Stars in their enterprise this afternoon. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, my task would have been a very simple one, to second the motion for adjournment. But the leader of government business have set the tone. Today, Mr. Speaker, we have heard the Honorable Minister for Finance
before this August House declare Ghana a high-risk, distressed debt country. So, Mr. Speaker, this budget is a campaign budget. And therefore, he's put the country on the path to debt restructuring, which he has announced as debt exchange program. So, Mr. Speaker, this budget is a campaign budget. A campaign because he has announced debt restructuring in the name of a debt exchange program. Mr. Speaker, my greatest expectation of the minister is to regularize his borrowing under the amended Bank of Ghana Act of 2016. You have to come back to this House to seek our mandate and authorization for your excessive borrowing from the Bank of Ghana. That needs to be regularized. Then, Mr. Speaker, today there is no pomp and pageantry. Even they are not happy. That explains why, Mr. Speaker, today he is unaccompanied. Where is the Vice President? He is unaccompanied by the Vice President. Mr. Speaker, okay, where are his? Yes. Mr. Speaker, but the minister said unity budget. Mr. Speaker, the minister have only confirmed that Ghana's economy is now on life support. And when you are on life support, two things can happen: a recovery or the unknown. He has our prayers that will help him to recover the economy. I beg to second the motion.
I understand the haste in which the leaders want to take us forward. But I assure you, I'll give you sufficient time to debate the budget. So don't allow your missiles to be unguided. Guide your missiles. Honorable members, motion moved and seconded is now for the consideration of the House. I think I'll proceed to put the question. Those in favor of the adjournment of the House, say aye. Those against, say no. I think the ayes have it. Honorable members, the ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is accordingly adjourned till Friday, 25th November 2022 at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. Honorable members, we'll meet here tomorrow to celebrate the victory of the Black Stars. The House is accordingly adjourned.
A campaign dede. A campaign dede.
And after some 2 hours or so, the finance minister has presented that much-awaited 2023 budget, which has been dubbed by him as the unity budget, but the minority is calling that budget Eka Impe Dede budget, which means death doesn't like noise. It's been an interesting 2 hours budget. Let me just give you some of the main bullet points from that budget, and then the three gentlemen here will help us dissect the issues as raised. First of all, there's some good news for all of us. The e-levy is going to be reduced to 1% of the transaction values, and also the removal of the daily threshold. So that's some good news for all of us. Government will continue with the 30% tax cuts for the president, the vice president, ministers, and all that, and those on political office holders as well. So that's the 30% tax cuts on their salaries. That will continue. Local production of fertilizers will be encouraged. So government is going to create some conducive environment for persons who want to produce fertilizer locally. Also, the interest for the agric insurance will be pushed, so we have that. And also, government will increase the leap from 41 cedis, 75 pesos per household, to 95 cedis, 19 pesos bi-monthly. School feeding program, which we see over 3 million children being fed every day, will be sustained. Remember, there's been discussions on whether we should continue with the school feeding program, especially because caterers receive less than 1 cedi per child, which is not sustainable, doesn't reflect the current cost of living. We are told that figure will be reviewed as well. So some good news for the caterers. The feeding grant will be increased. Also, the finance minister has announced that Ghana is now considered to be a high risk of debt distress, and he's given some pointers he intends to use to deal with us being now a debt distress country. He also spoke about expenditure and quite a number of things he intends to do to cut down on expenditure. There's been a lot of conversations on government cutting down expenditure to deal with our current challenges. So, one, there's going to be the ban on the use of V8s and V6, except for cross-country travel, we are told. So all government officials who use the V8s and V6 within Accra, you cannot do that anymore unless you intend to travel across the country, then you may use that. Purchase of local vehicles assembled here are now part of the expenditure cuts. So by that, we understand the V8s, V6, and all those will not be purchased. Rather, we go for the Kantakas. Also, there will be a ban on traveling. Only essential traveling for foreign travels will be encouraged for government appointees. And then no travel for board members, no foreign travel for board members as well. External training to be put on hold for next year. Also, there'll be the reduction of appointments expenditure, reduction in salaries and allowances. For example, housing allowances, utilities allowances, clothing allowances. And these are all for public sector officials. And then, of course, there'll be a freeze on new tax waivers for foreign companies and a review of tax exemptions for free zone mining, oil and gas companies. That conversation has also been running for a while on the need for government to cut off the tax waivers and the tax exemptions. We are now told that there will be a freeze on tax waivers and, of course, a review of tax exemptions for the mining companies, the oil companies, and companies under the free zone. Also, hiring, freeze has been put on hiring for civil and public servants. I'm not sure that is such a good news for public sector workers, because before we went for the IMF discussion, they had warned that they would not tolerate this, but that has appeared in the budget. So a freeze for civil and public servants in terms of hiring. Also, a freeze on the establishment of new government agencies for next year, that's 2023. Another good thing there, because of calls as well on the need to put on hold the creation of these new institutions, and also the cutting down of that. And also there will be no hampers for December, no printing of diaries, notepads, calendars, etc. And then all non-critical projects will be suspended for 2023. And another thing which, of course, traders will not be happy is an increase in VAT by 2.5%, which we are told will yield some 2.70 billion cedis, and that will be channeled into road construction. So these are the key points. We'll come and talk about that, but before, let's go over to Parliament again, because the majority is addressing the press.
Fortunately, we are negotiating a fund program, and so this budget, it was anchored on 4 key pillars. First of all, we want to achieve debt sustainability, and through the IMF program and the new program which has been announced in this budget, which is the debt exchange program, we believe that by the end of the year, we'll be able to bring the debt of the country to sustainable level. We also want to go on aggressive revenue mobilization path. And if you heard in this budget, government is seeking to raise the VAT by 2.5%. We are also coming from 1.5% to 1%. And we believe that that will help increase our revenue mobilization, among others. The property rate tax, which has been delayed for a while, is now ready for implementation. And that is also factored in this budget. We believe that we'll be able to achieve aggressive revenue mobilization in 2023. And then also we are talking about social protection. We understand that 2022 has been a very difficult year. And so we need to provide safety nets and social protection programs for the poor. And so in this budget, government is doing 2 important things. We are increasing the number of beneficiaries on the LEAP program from 320,000 to 450,000. And the 45 cedis they receive every month is also going to be increased. So that is very important to support the very poor people in our community. And so the school feeding program, of course, we have heard about the challenges with payment and all that. That has also been addressed in this budget. Government is going to increase the school feeding program rate to the caterers so that we can continue with those social protection programs as far as
Boateng, Vice President, Ghana Union of Traders Association. I'll start with Doug, because we are now terming ourselves as a high-risk, a country with high risk of debt stress. I hope I've got that term right. High risk of debt stress, which to me it's a bit of a problem now. Of course, acknowledging that a huge debt hangs over us, but what does that mean, and what does that mean to our future as a country and our current circumstances?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's something that we, many of us knew that we are in a state of debt distress. So it's high risk of debt distress. So it means that, we have significant difficulty. In ordinary terms, it means we have significant difficulty paying our debt. But this is more official because it's the finance minister saying it after the debt sustainability analysis has been done. I think that's what he said. So the last debt sustainability analysis we did was, I think, before the COVID.
Yeah.
Now, this is telling us that our debt situation has worsened. So our ability to repay our debt has even been more compromised. So I think that's why he said that, the government is going to embark on a debt exchange program. I think in the budget speech, there's not enough sufficient detail, apart from saying that this time is going to cover all entities, including our foreign bondholders. So in essence, I mean, some people might say that is exactly the same as saying we are going to do a debt restructuring. But he called it a debt exchange program. So I think it would be interesting to see what the details are, to learn more about exactly the nature of this exchange. Because in the lead up to this budget, there's been a lot of discussion about debt restructuring and haircuts. The president.
But aren't we seeing the haircuts already? These haircuts within the banking sector, within the investment areas and all that, within the foreign investors, aren't we seeing it already?
So, I mean, in practical terms, some people who try to remove their investment early are probably seeing a lower value than what they would have expected. Because there's been a change in the method for calculation, following advice of the SEC. So, but a debt in our sense, in the national sense, in terms of our national debt, when we say that there's a haircut, that's going to be slightly different. So in case of what the SEC has announced, if you decide to hold your investment to maturity or to hold on to your investment for longer, you may not necessarily see that reduction in the value. But with the debt exchange program that the finance minister has talked about, well, we wait to see what the details are. But, you sense that it's going to be some form of a formal haircut coming up.
So what does that mean, that formal haircut? We want to understand what it may entail, that formal haircut as a country.
It's difficult to say because, I think the finance minister is being careful not to spook people. So all that he said, at least in the speech that was read, was that there's a debt exchange program. And then he mentioned which debtors will be affected. And it appears as everybody, including our foreign bondholders. So I think it's important that we wait and see a lot more detail before we start speculating about what may or may not happen. And I do hope that sufficient details are released as quickly as possible. Because the last time we heard news about potential haircuts, the government took too long to respond. And that allowed the rumor to fester.
Speculation.
Exactly. So I think it's mentioned that there's a debt exchange program. I just hope that as soon as possible we see more detail about exactly what this debt exchange program is, so that people will know and brace themselves up for what may or may not happen.
Do you think that foreign investors will be happy with this budget, especially having debt thrown in there and now us officially telling all of us where we are?
I have to say I was a little bit underwhelmed by some of the fiscal targets. So we were told that for 2023, the target for the fiscal deficit is 7.7% of GDP. Now, you notice that last year we announced a target of 7.4%. And then in the mid-year budget, we revised it down to 6.6%. So given all that has happened with the state of our finances, you would have expected that maybe you would have gone for a harder target or try to cut the deficit a little bit more. So I'm not so sure that investors will be comforted to see that, if as recently as July, we are trying to end this year with a deficit of 6.6, and now it's been announced that next year we are targeting 7.7. It doesn't seem too comforting in terms of how long it will take to restore our debt to sustainable levels. But generally, if you also look at the other targets, you get a sense that 2023 will be a very difficult year. So our growth target is
2.3. Isn't that a bit ambitious, considering our circumstances now?
Well, this year our revised target is 3.7.
Yeah.
So when you know, we see that we are revising it for next year to 2.8, you get a sense that it's not going to be very pleasant. And then you also see that our inflation target is now 18.9.
Yeah.
That seems quite ambitious, given where we are.
40.
And then also the fact that we may end the year slightly higher than the 40 that we currently see. And then our gross international reserves target has also been revised down. We are now seeking to have a minimum of 3.3 months import cover. So overall, and also you do see that in terms of the expenditure, even though we've had a lot of measures to cap expenditure on the government side, we also see the substantial growth in how much we are planning to spend from last year to this year, from 2022 to 2023. So it's not clear to me that if I'm a foreign investor, I will feel so comforted by this budget.
Okay, I'll come back to you, but let me go to the, I don't know whether I should start with the e-levy or the VAT, because I know the VAT, Clement is not happy about. So I don't want to start with, because Doc's initial utterances shows that the devil is in the detail indeed, and it's not a nice budget. You know, but let me start with e-levy because it will affect everybody. We're told it's been reduced to 1% of the transaction value, but the removal of daily threshold. That means any transaction you make, the 1% hits you. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. Good news or bad news? A few people say no, it's not good enough. The 1% still high, and covering daily threshold is not. I mean, every transaction is not such a good news like we think it is.
Well, from the time that they started this e-levy issue, we have been saying that the principle beside it is okay, but is the rate that we were talking about, because we have always been talking about trying as much as possible to rope in more people for the purposes of tax collection, because we have seen that it's just some few people who have been paying, tax, and we all know that government relies on tax for its development. So when they were bringing this e-levy, Guta didn't oppose to it, but we were talking about the rate that it has to be charged. And at that time, we proffered that they should start at least from somewhere. They should start from 0.5, and we thought if they start from that rate, then everybody will be comfortable in paying. And the government didn't listen, and then they pegged the rate at 1.5, and we all attest to what has happened. The government could not be able to, achieve its intended revenue, and so therefore there was the need for them to review it. And we were thinking that they will still go back to 0.5, but well, they have made it 1%, and then let's see how it goes, if people will still patronize it, because as far as we are concerned, people are using ways and means to try as much as possible to dodge this e-levy, and that is the more reason why government is not achieving its revenue target. So I thought if they had reduced it to 0.5, it would have been better, but fine. They've done something. Let's see how it goes.
Edward, 1% still not good enough?
Well, for me, my fears have been confirmed by this budget. We have a strong belief that once government decided to go to IMF, we are going to have a more austere budget, and there will be more conditionalities. So we want government not to go there.
But did the government have a solution?
No, we also made it clear that IMF is not a solution to our problems. We know Ghana has got a problem, but that problem they have is not going to be solved by IMF, because we have been there 16 times, and it's now the 17th time. There are two things. either IMF does not have the solution to our problems, or we are so recalcitrant that we don't want to keep to the IMF.
I think it's the latter, because they come in, they clean your books, they bath you or do the powder and everything. When they leave, you go back into the mud.
So prior to this budget is indeed technically written by IMF.
Because you have dubbed it the IMF budget.
I'm saying, yeah, I've dubbed it is an IMF budget. And before he read it, I knew it was going to be IMF budget.
Why? What are you seeing in there that is so IMF-ish?
IMF conditionalities are featuring. Whenever you go for IMF program, one, you have to cut down government size. Cutting down government size is not bad per se, but where do you cut down? In this budget, we have heard that workers' salaries will be slashed. We have also heard that allowances will be taken off. We have heard that they are not going to hire more workers in the public sector. These are, the basic conditionalities of IMF.
But did we need IMF to tell us that when we knew our expenditure from the public sector side was too high? We knew that there were too many institutions being formed under government. We have a duplication of portfolios. We have about 3 or 2 ministers at a place that we could avoid. So must IMF tell us this?
You see, that's what I said, that conditionalities are not bad per se. But who do they target? If nothing is said about, cutting down the government size in terms of ministers, what they are saying is, V8s and V6, unless you are making a cross-country travel, you cannot use them. Who is going to supervise that? Look, there are certain things we know. Tomorrow, come 2023, you see the roads littered with those V8s. You will still see them with their motorcades as if they want to kick all of us out, running to where they are, as if they are the only people who are working. And now we are all here. God will give us long life. We will see what will happen. You see, why should you touch the vulnerable? People need employment. When you are not working in Europe, where IMF is, and in America, you are giving unemployment benefit. Here, people are working, but you say that they are not efficient enough, so they should be laid off. Now you are saying the young men and women who are completing schools and they are looking for jobs, government should not employ them. When we also know very well that government is huge when it comes to employment creation in this country. Until you are able to prop your economy to a point where the private sector can then become the dominant employment creator, government should not renege on its responsibility. But this is what they are saying here. Look, the e-levy, you see, no one is against paying taxes. Ghanaians are people who pay taxes all the time. When they go to church, look, they will donate first collection, second collection, third collection, and so on. Voluntarily, they will do it. So Ghanaians are ready to pay taxes. We said the rate is too high. You refused. You just came and took off only 0.5%. Now, when you take off 0.5% and you leave the 1%, then you go back to say that the threshold is also removed. You see, look, we are all rational beings. You have done, you reduce here, and then you add up here. Look, the effect is not much. It's not just about doing something, but we are talking about doing something that will have a big effect on us. So the e-levy, they should have gone to they should have reduced to 0.5%, and then take out the threshold. That way it will be understandable. Yeah. But you don't come and do this, and then you think that we will respond. We should say it is a good budget. The other thing is that you have decided to raise your VAT. Who pays the VAT? So if e-levy, you have reduced it only by 0.05, and then you go to increase VAT by 2.5. What is all this about? Who is the one paying the taxes? You see, if you look at the expenditure cutting, they are clear about the things they want to do. But when it comes to generating, propping up the economy, they are not so clear. You mentioned that they are saying that there will no longer be exemptions for new foreign companies. Okay. What about the local companies?
What about the local companies? They are even saying new, tax exemptions for them. What about the existing ones? They have not given indication that the existing companies which are benefiting the existing tax exemptions is going to be reviewed. They have not said that. So the existing one is not even good, and you are saying the new ones will not come.
So they say freeze on new tax waivers for foreign companies and review tax exemptions for free zone mining, oil and gas companies.
Very good. That is it. So once you have done that, now what I was also looking at is that, one, the existing mining companies and oil and gas companies, our share in those companies is very insulting.
Close to nothing,
So why don't you tell us that you are going to review all those things or you are going to renegotiate that? They are not saying anything about that. So it means our revenue levels will still remain as it was. Our proportion of the revenue level will remain the same. So you can see that when it comes to how we are going to get the revenue, that is not too forthcoming. They are talking about agriculture. And they are saying that in agriculture, they are going to cultivate 110,000 acres of land, this and that. You know, they are not, again, also very clear, tangible things that we are doing A, B, C, D. They said, look, we will support rice, fish, poultry industries. I mean, how are you going to support them? Tell us how you are going to do it. You know, this. And when and you hold them on, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, because there was no clear, direction on what they want.
Clear direction. And I'll tell you that they know that in 2023, and we have made that statement critically and strongly, that 2023 is going to be a very difficult year. And we are on the ground. We don't like the book long term. Those figures mean nothing to us because they don't take food to our table. We are bookshort people, and that's why we are. Look, go to the farm today. People have diverted from producing maize to soybean. So maize is going to be in short supply, more in short supply in 2023 than it is now. Harvesting is taking place. People are on the farms and mopping whatever is there. So what have they said about agriculture? The mere fact that you are saying you want to support local industries, those who produce rice, you have not said it clearly. We don't know the nature of the support. So for me...
But what kind of support, you are in that industry, what kind of support clearly do they need? So if they are watching, they know where to channel, since, maybe they are throwing it at you, hoping you tell them what to do.
Yes. One, what is the budget allocated to Minister of Agriculture? What clear measures are going to ensure that fertilizers are not smuggled out of this country? What are the direct, support? And that's what I'm saying, that, of course, we are saying this is a generality of it, of the budget. The details are there. But we need to have specific. I'm saying this because we are in a crisis state. And the point has been made. And me, when I did com skills at school, when they say you break down these figures. Look, you are saying high risk of debt distress. Even debt distress alone is a problem.
Then high risk.
The high risk. You see, the high risk, these adjectives are making it so serious. So if you don't prop up seriously the domestic production system, it will not work. And the cuts they are making, those ones are even still within their domain. They are saying the public sector cuts they are going to, we will cut imports of public sector institutions that rely on imports by 50%. Who is going to measure them? Who is going to hold them accountable for that? They are the public sector.
So you are worried about the supervision of all these things that have been said, and you fear that based on what you know of our system, nothing will come out of this.
When they are not too specific and they are evasive, you can't hold them on. And we don't want that now. Okay. Because it is this type of evasive language, speaking in general terms, that has brought us to where we are now.
Okay.
We want specific. When they are talking about the e-levy and the rest, they are very specific. They are very specific about that.
Okay. Yeah. And then address the VAT as well.
Yeah, I think if you look at the budget, they said it's pivoted on a 7-point agenda. Mm-hmm. And as part of the agenda, they talk about a boost in local productive capacity. And that is where they talk about providing a 500 million special credit program to support businesses in the agric value chain. Mm-hmm. So the development bank is supposed to provide that fund for you people in the agric sector. So I think that is maybe where you have to you have to look at.
No.
It's one of the specifics.
Yes, I'm saying.
Maybe the party wants to be now a spokesperson for government. We don't know. But let's move to the VAT. Yes, I want Doc to also, whilst he's answering the VAT, to also tell us whether this VAT with increase is a good idea and how we juxtapose it with the e-levy and all that in raking up our revenue. So,
yes,
Clement, tell us.
Regarding the VAT increase of 2.5%, they said they have increased it to directly support our roads.
Roads,
and
yes.
then digitization
yes.
agenda.
Yes.
But I thought they instead of adding 2.5% to the 12.5% and saying they are using it to support our road sector, they should have brought back the road toll and then automate.
But how much was the road toll yielded for us in a year? Doc, do you have it off?
I think it was roughly about 72 million.
72. Well, they are saying the VAT
78
million a year.
And
they are saying the VAT they'll get 2.70 billion cedis. That's good money.
No, but you see, irrespective of that fact, I think if they had still introduced it and then automate it, they would have even gotten
more money.
More money. Because the way I'm managing to operate the road toll system here, it's not the best. You reach there and then they issue a ticket, some ticket to you, and people have been saying that those even in the toll boats have even been printing their own tickets. And when they sell government's one, they also sell their own one. So the best thing they could have done is to automate the system so that if you reach there, you just plug in your distance and then it opens for you and you go. They would have gotten much more money. I don't support this idea of increasing the VAT rate. Do you know what it is going to be? It is going to escalate prices because already we have been complaining that with the standard rate of 12.5% and then the amendment of the VAT law which added 2.5% get fund to it and then 2.5% national insurance levy and then 1% COVID levy to make it 18.5%, it has a cascading effect on prices. And that is the more reason why our brothers in Kumasi embark on closure of their shops. Because they thought even the rate, the manner that, VAT is even charged in this country is not the best because the playing field is not leveled. We have about 3 types of VAT scheme that is being charged in this country. The standard rate, we have the flat rate, and then we have those that don't charge the VAT at all. And the customer is under no compulsion, to buy from a VAT registered person or
a non-VAT
registered person. And so therefore, the increase of this 2.5% is going to have another cascading effect on prices. And once it is passed at Parliament, it is going to even affect duty payment at the post. Already, we've been crying over duty payments for the past 1-2 months. The rate and manner values have gone up at the ports. My sister, is very astronomical. Something that we were paying 50,000 as import duties, we are now paying about 200,000. Wow. So with the increase of this VAT, it is going to compound the situation. And so customers or consumers must therefore brace themselves up for price increment.
Would you guys resist it?
Oh, I mean, you see, it is not everything that you have to, resist, but we will try as much as possible and engage, government on it if something could be done about it. Because, like I'm telling you, it already has an effect on prices as a result of the values that they have increased. So if this VAT is going to go up by this percentage, it is going to have another effect on the duties that we will pay. So we will try as much as possible, engage government, and then see what could be done about it.
So we have to brace ourselves for more hikes in terms of prices for goods and services.
Definitely.
So 2023, there, no bagawaya. Doc, is this a way to go? I mean, already the few people who are taxed are crying. We're thinking that there will be clear measures on widening the tax net proper and not going to overflock the same, horse. But that's what we're seeing. But is that the only way to boost the revenue?
Yes. Well, so let's recap the main revenue measures that were announced. So we've spoken about the reduction in the e-levy to 1%, but then removal of the daily threshold.
Yeah.
So I think the net effect will depend on the nature of your transactions. I guess for many people who do higher value transactions, maybe they will see a reduction. And then there's something about reducing the upper limits for vehicle benefits.
Yes.
And then also
30%.
an additional tax bracket at a rate of 35%.
35, yeah.
So that sounds a little more progressive. That means that relatively higher income earners will end up paying a higher rate. So I personally, proud to the budget, thought that it would be good to try and bring in measures to collect more from higher income earners. In addition to that, then we've also seen the VAT increment. I'm quite surprised that that's the path we've chosen. If you look at this government from the time it has come into power, in the first few years, it tends to focus a lot more on trying to formalize and digitize the economy, to expand the tax bracket, I mean, to expand the tax base so that more people are brought into the tax-paying bracket. In the last few years, it appears that it's completely gone away from that. And this budget is another confirmation that it's actually moving away from that. I was surprised that there hasn't been so much discussion on where we are moving the property taxes. I'm not sure whether the full budget statement itself will say anything about that, but that is one area I would have expected that we will do a lot more in terms of collecting more property, because we've done too much indirect taxes, and also we will expect that the direct taxes in terms of bringing more people in the informal sector to pay their due would have been the way to go. Even though last year we were told that that's what e-levy is supposed to do. E-levy is just an indirect tax. I'm not sure that that's what it achieves that purpose. So overall, I think it's quite surprising. I will applaud the fact that we are introducing a higher bracket for higher earners. I would have brought back the road tolls and refine the way we are collecting it. We know that there are a lot of leakages because of how it was collected. And then the government is right that the road tolls was causing a lot of congestion at the collection point. But that's because the way we are collecting it was not the most efficient way. After all the digitization we had done, we would have expected that we would have changed how we collect the tolls so that we make it more efficient. If you want to expand the infrastructure around the toll points, we could have done that. So you make the argument that it wasn't bringing in as much, but where we are now, every penny adds to the kitty. So I think it would have been a good idea to bring it back. And then I'm not sure how much we are going to get from the exemption. So there's been another statement that we are going to reduce exemptions or halt exemptions for new foreign companies and then those in the free zones. It would have been good to hear some updates from the finance minister. Those exemptions that were passed in the course of the year, and then the fact that they are still developing the platform, they were piloting the platform for the common property tax collection. It would have been good to get some update. I'm not sure whether they are updating the main budget itself. So, you know, we look forward to that. But overall, you know, I expected that we would have done more to expand the tax.
But why are we finding it difficult to collect property tax? I keep wondering, what's so difficult to do? That goes to any of you.
It seems to me it's more, it's quite baffling. After all the digitization we've done and the registering over 7.5 million properties, and you know, linking people to identification systems to where they live, you know, you struggle to understand maybe what more is needed before we'll be able to collect more from that. I guess some people will cynically say maybe most of the properties are owned by people who are politically exposed or something. But otherwise, it's very difficult to understand why we haven't made enough effort in that area.
Yes. Because last year they talked about it, and this year too, they've spoken about it. They say fast track the implementation of the property rates platform program. We don't know why up to now, since last year, they've not been able to
implement. I see it in two ways. One, the institutions that are supposed to collect these property rates are simply not ready. They are just not working. Even where, look, sometimes it's pathetic. You have your property, they will eventually issue you with a notice almost at the end of the year for you to come and pay your property rate. So I go there and I ask, why? This money, it has been with me. You know, from January to date, this money has lost value. You are asking me to come and pay. Why couldn't you have gotten to me earlier? And you don't need to go far, because we have a system whereby if you check Accra, it's zoomed. It's zoomed in smaller areas where you can locate. If you are around East Legon, there must be
a place that you can go.
You can zoom all of them. You can count all the houses and go and ask them to pay. They will pay until you do your digitalization or whatever you want to do. You can go fiscally and go and collect that money, and it's big money. They will not come. They will come even very late. So the people who are even supposed to collect the property, they will not do. The second thing is that there are many of those properties that are not known. But no one bothers to go and ask for it. And you see, when you don't go and ask for it, they cannot be following you to
tell you what's it.
So that is how I see it. We are not ready, and it is our own fault. Because properties are fiscal. They are there. You can see them. Nobody can hide it. You see? But you will not go there.
Right. Now let's come to your sector, agriculture.
Yes.
You have been on the spotlight for at least 6 months.
Yes.
And it's even got worse this month and last month, because we were told the food was there. Your members were charging astronomical prices to give us the food. Food, plantain, the agri minister tells us plantain in Western North, for example, a bunch at 5 cedis. When it gets to Accra, you're selling to us at 80 cedis, 90 cedis, 100 cedis, and your excuse is transportation. Your excuse is non-availability of fertilizer, all that. What's going on?
Well, it's the truth is what we are experiencing. It doesn't need to take the agri minister to tell the entire population that there is food. If it is there, the people will see it and they will say it. If I lie, you will not lie. If I lie, he will not lie. If it's there, people will say it. So why must it take the minister to say that? It tells you that there's something wrong. In any case, are we all dependent on plantain?
No, he's brought vegetables, he's brought rice. He's threatening to bring oil and all other ones.
You know what?
Chicken, very soon, eggs, everything.
You know what? They have got contradictory policies. In the budget here, we also will support locally, the
fertilizer, local producer,
support domestic producers. How do you support them? Go to the market and you know, and I also know, different brands of what? rice. You just even become afraid. Some names are very
you cannot even pronounce.
Threatening you. You fear that if you buy this particular rice, you will buy something else. Where do they come from? I mean, they allow everything to be imported into this place.
But now they say they will stop helping such people. And Mr. Watson's people are crying that no, don't stop us from getting access to forex to import. So how does government, please all of us?
No. This time around, we are in support of government not providing
the forex for your members.
Forex for our members, because we have seen that it's all contributed to the depreciation of the cedi, and that is why we want government to come out with the modalities that they are going to, put in place to check all this thing. Because if you issue a statement that we are not going to provide forex for the importation of X, Y, Z items, what policies and programs have you put in place to be able to take care of that?
The deficit will
yes, the deficit. We all want to help AGI as a manufacturing entity in Ghana here to be able to produce what we should consume locally. But does the AGI have the capacity? So government must come out with the timelines that maybe in the next 2-3 years, AGI should be able, to meet the volumes of these items, so that even if government wants to place ban on the importation of those items, we will know that if government places ban, we will not be found wanting, because we cannot therefore produce those items, and therefore there's going to be a shortfall. So we have asked government to come out with a clear guidelines of that policy, so that if government decide that fine, maybe in the next 2-3 years, we will no more be able to provide forest for you. So therefore, we can see that AGI will have the capacity to produce those items, but you cannot give just
stop it down.
Yes, stop it like that.
Edward, you're on the floor.
Yeah, I'm saying that if you, just to even build on what he's saying, we are not there, even we those who are advocating that, we don't say that ban. No. The policy that has come out, if you look at it carefully, it's a ban. It's a technical ban. What they're saying, they will deny you forex to import.
Yeah.
They are not saying they are going to reduce the forex that they will give you to import.
Yeah.
If they say they will reduce, it means that the quantities that you bring will be reduced because you don't have enough forex. But they are saying they are not going to give you forex. It is coming at the wrong time. This particular policy, which is a good one, is coming at the wrong time.
Why so?
Why? You are saying that poultry should not be imported into Ghana because you won't give them forex around this time when it is the yellow time?
Christmas.
Is that what you are saying? You have not prepared your own manufacturing base, like he's saying, to take up the shortfall. The poultry industry is almost collapsed. Where is your rice? Where? So all this, so a good policy at the wrong time is a bad policy.
Okay. Right. Guys, we have 3 minutes to wrap up. It's almost time. It's just flying. So 3 minutes, I'm going to share among all of you. One minute. Doc, you are the economist. For what we are saying, 2023 is not going to be easy. Tell us how bad it will be for all of us as Ghanaians, everyday Ghanaian, and then what government would have to be doing more to make it softer for us for 2023. Tell us as it is. We'll take it like that.
Well, I think we've already seen, and we are going to have to take some tough decisions. We've seen the economy is not going to expand as much as we expected last year, or what we are seeing currently. So that means there are difficult times. I have to say, before the budget, some of us had advocated that government should really show its hand by showing some commitment. So in some sense, it was good to see all the measures to try and then cap expenditures, the ban on the use of V8. Hopefully we start feeling it on the roads, and limiting the purchase of new vehicles, and no hampers and so on and so forth. Those are good. I think maybe the government could have done more. I think many people expected that maybe we would have done something about the size of government in terms of the ministry. So, but generally, I also like the fact that there are some, for the first time in a while, we are seeing the budget try to touch on other areas in terms of restructuring the economy. Okay. So it was good that the government still sees some critical infrastructure that should be invested in. I hope that it is tilted more towards reducing the bottlenecks between the production areas and then the markets. Okay. Because if you believe what the Agriculture Minister has been saying, food production is doing well at the farm gates, but getting them to the markets. So, you know, and then there's also been discussions about boosting local production through supporting use of organic fertilizers. So I think in terms of when you read the headline numbers, they sound great to the ears in terms of trying to reduce imports and then boost local production and then boost our export. So those things sound great on paper. Okay. We all live to see how it will play out in the implementation. Okay. After reading of the last year budget, I said that as a country, we shouldn't really be applauding ourselves for putting good things on paper. It is when we actually follow through and implement them properly, then we can applaud ourselves. So for now, it appears that some good things have been said. On paper. Let's wait and see how the actual implementation will pan out.
In reality. All right, thanks, Doc. Edward.
Well, I think that we have all agreed that tough days are ahead of us. 2023 is going to be a tough time. I have not seen clearly very radical measures being taken by government, this budget, to address the deficit in agricultural production for 2023. I have not also seen an allocation to, because measures go with cost, and that I have not seen the allocation that they have put together to meet the radical change. And meanwhile, there's no radical change. I was also thinking that this COVID tax should go off now. Yeah. I don't know why it's still there. Yeah. Because COVID was heavily subsidized. Yeah. It was heavily subsidized, but it's still there. We don't know whether we are finished paying off and we are now using it as a revenue generation. We don't know when they are going to. I thought it would have gone on. It has not. The other thing is that government must take critical steps now. And I believe normally they have a contingency fund. They should get that fund and go to the farm gates now and buy food and stock for this country. Because this is the harvesting time. They can give you to buffer stock. Tell them to use some of the warehouses that are existing somewhere. Make sure that they just buy and stock. Otherwise, what we have seen on the farm gate, they are talking about food. Food is a generic name. Food is made up of a number of foodstuffs. What we have now is what? Plantain. And plantain is highly perishable. Yeah. What we have now is yam. And yam is seasonal and highly perishable. So there are those things that we have. But the main things that we eat, maize, soybean, rice, look, production this year is very low. Okay. Aside that, the maize, which we need for poultry, is just not there. So government must take a radical measure beyond this budget. You know, there's a leeway beyond this budget to make sure that we get enough food for 2020. Otherwise, we are in for the difficulties.
Hard times.
Yes, I was expecting the finance minister to give much more details about the talks with IMF as to when actually the bailout will come, so that it will bring some sort of stability to our ailing cedi. If you listen to him, the information that he provided was a little bit scanty, and I was expecting to hear much more details about it. I was also expecting him to talk about capping of the Ghana reference rate, because it is that rate that the banks borrowed, and after they also add their margins to it. Currently, it is between about 8 to 11%. So if you want to borrow from the bank now, you are supposed to pay almost about 40%. And we have been talking to the finance ministry to try as much as possible to have a capping, because it is being done within the sub-region. Why is it that Ghana here they can't do it? They just give the bank an open range, and then they just add any rates that they want. If you listen to the general presentation of the budget, you go with the 7 key points that the minister enumerated. I think if they are able to implement it, somehow it will go a long way to help us, because the bane of this country has been implementation of policies and programs. So if they are able to implement it, maybe next year by this time, we will be seeing something differently.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Dr. Patrick Isumin, economist at the University of Ghana Business School, Edward Carraway, General Secretary, General Agricultural Workers Union, that's GAU, and Clement Boateng, Vice President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, giving us some insights and some interesting views of the 2023 budget. Thank you so much for joining us. The conversation continues on radio at 5:30 on Eyewitness News, and on TV on City Newsroom at 8 p.m. tonight. But for now, it's thank you so much. We'll be bringing you some discussions as well on the World Cup right after this program. You want to stay with us on City TV and City FM. My name is Vivian Kai Local. Thank you and have a good bye.
What do you get when you mix the best DJs in the country, the most amazing live band sets, delicious cocktails, and wonderful food? Back-to-back hit music from Ghana's finest group, Prayer, and being serenaded by the brilliantly talented Aquabua. The biggest outdoor party, of course. Situation 2022. Are you ready to party? We're changing the situation on December 24, 2022 with the biggest outdoor party in Accra. The Situation Outdoor Party 2022. Let's wrap up the year in style with the most epic party to end all parties this Christmas Eve with Situation. Make your Christmas Eve come alive with the most incredible DJs who will keep you dancing all night long. Amazing live band sets and the crooner Aquabua. It is the perfect ingredient for the best party this festive season. Ain't no party like a city party, because a city party don't stop. This will be another one to remember. Date Saturday 24th December 2022. Venue La Palm Royal Beach Hotel, Accra. Time 8 p.m. Dress code, it's an all-white affair. For table booking, call 020-5973-973 or 055-8973-973. Book your table and make reservations now. Media partners, Ghana Weekend and City FM. This is powered by City TV. This is a Beyond the Return event.
My name is Gina, and this salon is where I work. Good morning to those who speak good English like I do. That's B, Assistant Madam. always cleaning boss.
Efia, so can't you sweep the place? Do you know what I went through last night? I had to uninstall the whole of the night, but I managed to be here today.
That's Efia. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records for giving the most excuses.
I am not missing any drama today.
Ow, you're burning my scalp!
Baby, I messed up again. Oh. My family witches. I'm sure they've located the salon.
Hey, don't come and prophesy on me. That's Hannah, always acting religious.
I didn't see you on Sunday. I hope it's not about that gentleman.
Is he cheating? If he was just cheating, it wouldn't have been a problem.
He bought that foolish girl.
Sometimes you just have to figure out things you are doing or not doing right.
Especially with the bedroom things, maybe you're not doing it right.
Ask God for more spouse.
Akramo is back. Look, today I have hip pad and buttocks pad.
You like this? Your buttocks is like my palm.
Which part of your body do they want?
I'm Gifty, the owner of this salon.
Good. Now that's our boss.
Hey!
Last time the week cap you came to pick, you still haven't brought the money.
Ask Gina, I paid her.
She's owing you.
You've already met your new colleague, have you?
Are you straight?
No, I'm not. I'm crooked.
The Hairdressers returns on 7th December 2022 at 7:30 p.m. only on City TV.
The sisters are back with more chic and spice than ever. Join the League of Exceptional Sisters as they come to the rescue of relationships with the all-new season of Sister Sister. Be it gut-wrenching personal secrets, jaw-dropping partner shenanigans, or the cringe-worthy deeds of family and friends, our sisters will be here to help you weave through the simplest and most complicated relationship issues. Sister Sister airs every Thursday at 7 p.m. on 97.3 City FM and every Friday at 9 p.m. on City TV. Sister Sister is sponsored by Kel Kids Toothpaste, the Ghana AIDS Commission, and Onga.
We are resorting to more expensive chemicals to be able to get to be able to reduce the process losses. If you go to Odaso, if we're not using the polyelectrolyte, we might not have been able to even get up to 30% of the water to send to Obuasi. But with the use of the polyelectrolyte, we are doing about 50%. And so at every time you have to increase costs. If you are using the aluminum sulfates, you will have to use, the more aluminum sulfate you put in your water, the more other chemicals that you put in to correct your pH level. So at all times, the costs continue to go very, very high. And I think that if PURC can allow us to pass on the cost to the citizens, yes, politically it might have some implications. But when people begin to see the cost, I'm sure we'll all go onto the rivers and directly get the people who are doing that damage away. If we don't take that seriously, I'm sure even our rivers will die.
Regardless of what your point of view may be, he holds a mirror for you to see the reflection of reality.
Two young men, brilliant student, best student in his school. He says, I believe in this as my identity, my religion. You say no. You won't take him because it breaks discipline. I think we should not be at the wrong side of history.
Dispassionate opinions that shape your point of view.
As for the president's credibility in terms of anti-corruption, I'm afraid to say he's in tatters.
An analytical and non-partisan
I'll give you a
point of
proverb,
view.
and I can proverb. So Patrick Kwaso be Mount Oma, it ain't. This year, forget it.
Dialogue that informs your socio-political point of view.
I'm young enough to wait for God's opportunity tomorrow, and I'm not in a haste.
Are you lacing your boots for 2024?
Absolutely not.
They are not lacing. What time you see the shoe you have been wearing? Whether they have been boots? No, it's not Cambo.
A chance for the duty bearers to provide the citizens with an honest point of view.
We are being given rare and privileged access to a building which is part of the National Operations Directorate.
And we are so determined, to fight all manner of crime. Even the broad daylight robberies that we see and the footage seen, we can say that we are going all out, to make sure that we contain them.
Educative chit-chat from the expert's point of view.
No, there is, in fact, that rumor has been said about so many vaccines. People said the tetanus vaccine causes infertility, and we are trying to make our women infertile. No, it's not true.
On the Point of View with Bernard Avler, every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. only on City TV.